Hey everyone, I'm John Craig, nutritionist, coach, author, and the founder of Gorilla and She Coaching. I have spent over the last 2 decades studying, living, and testing everything that the nutrition world throws at us. And the reason for that, maximising performance, health, and well-being, is my goal for my clients and I. Welcome to the truth about diets. Now I know what you're expecting. Another video pitting one tribe against the other. Carnivore versus vegan. Fasting versus Mediterranean. Keto versus balanced. But that's not what we're doing here. This is something different. This is not a diet war. This is not clickbait claims. And it is definitely not about selling you some miracle formula. If you do stick around to the end, you may find something that works for you. This is a deep dive into the science, the psychology, and looking at what actually works. And not just in theory, but in real bodies with real lives. I've coached many people, from stressed out parents to bodybuilders who are eating up to 6,000 calorie meal plans. From struggling clients with chronic fatigue all the way up to elite athletes who are preparing for national championships. And guess what? They don't eat the same. They don't move the same. And they don't even respond to food. So how can we expect one diet to work for everyone? We can't. But what we can do, and what this video is about, is we can help you build a system that works for you, your biology, your lifestyle, and your goals. You'll learn the truth about most popular diets, and not my opinion, but what the studies say. You'll see how the experts out there, often they get twisted, or their words do, by social media. You'll hear about real people who have transformed their lives, and that is by following the science and not going extreme. And you'll finally understand why some diets feel impossible to follow, while others unlock your metabolism, your energy, and your focus. Where we want to be is you forgetting about diets. Diets, to me, they sound so negative. What we want is for you to understand a system that works for you. A system that will help you achieve your desired outcome. No dogma, no food religion, just facts, framework, and freedom. And just to be clear from the start, I genuinely do not believe in labels or diets. I'll explain why later on. That's not just about diets, that is about all aspects of life. So before we get going, if you want to grab a coffee, grab a protein shake, whatever it is you like, let's get going. This is your body, your life, and your rules. What are we actually comparing? Let's start with the most important question throughout this entire conversation. When we compare diets, what are we actually comparing? Weight loss, before and after shots, or those Instagram photoshopped physiques? Now these things is what many people think about, but that is part of the problem. These surface level goals distract us from the real question. What is happening inside your body when you change how you eat? Because here's the truth. 2 people can eat the exact same food. One loses fat, they build muscle, and they feel amazing. The other gains fat, loses energy, and they feel miserable. So why is that? Because we are not just comparing calories or macros, we are comparing biology. We are comparing hormonal responses. We are comparing internal signals and environmental context. And yet, we are still sold the same outdated formula. Calories in, calories out. Yep, you heard that before. Eat less, move more. Yeah. Just be disciplined. You've got to control yourself. How about be motivated? Sound familiar? Well, yes, sounds simple, and yeah, it can be for some, but for many, it is just not so simple. Food is more than just fuel. Your body isn't a calculator, it's an ecosystem. And food, it isn't just fuel. Food is like information. Every bite sends a chemical signal to your brain, your cells, and your hormones. Carbs raise insulin. They help refill glycogen and control cortisol. And that is if it's timed correctly. Protein activates mTOR, the muscle building pathway. It fuels your immune system, your neurotransmitters, and your skin. Fats, they regulate hormones. They slow digestion, impact brain health, and they determine sex hormone production. Same calories, completely different outcomes. And that is why 500 calories from croissants and juice isn't equal to 500 calories of chicken, sweet potatoes, and broccoli. You know this instinctively, but most diets, they treat your body like a spreadsheet. Let's break this myth right now. Now let's look at a real life example. One of my clients, Liam, he went from food obsession to food freedom. Liam was eating close to 5,000 calories a day. Not really because he wanted to, but mostly because he couldn't stop. Fizzy drinks with every meal, sometimes even in between. Takeaways most working days, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day. Constantly snacking on refined carbs and processed junk. Big dinners, late night treats. In Liam's situation, it is understandable working away from home and often working 15-hour shifts most days. On top of that, he also lives in a camper van. So not surprisingly, after eating all this and the demands of his job, he wakes up in the morning, ready to restart the process, and he is hungry again. He wasn't overweight because of greed, and it certainly wasn't because he was underactive, because Liam does an average of 18,000 steps every day because of his work. He was overweight though, because of his bad habits. His satiety signalling was broken. His hunger hormone ghrelin was constantly elevated. His leptin, the signal that tells your brain that you're full, was being ignored. He had no blood sugar control, no rhythm, no protein anchors. And his macros, they needed flipped around. When we rebuilt his nutrition, here's what we changed. Protein was prioritised, and he jumped from around 80 grams a day to over 200 grams every day. Fats were encouraged, but from better sources. Fibre went from almost 0 up to 35 grams every day. Water intake doubled as we reduced fizzy drinks, along with his energy. Sleep, it did improve, and something we are still working on. Cravings, once we focused more on whole foods, started to really disappear. If anything, Liam was struggling to eat his meals someday. So within 14 days, Liam was struggling to eat all of his meals. Interestingly though, that is even though they were half the calories, or less some days, than what he used to eat easily every day. Same man, same calorie window, but now his body is saying, no thanks, I'm full. He dropped 25 kilos in the first few months, and that is without using the gym. Not because he was trying harder, because he wasn't. This is because we were giving his metabolism the foods that it needed to be healthy. And although less important, in the process of doing this, just imagine how much he saved on not buying takeaways and constantly buying processed junk food. Metabolism isn't just burning calories. Your metabolism is like a thermostat, not a calculator. It responds to food, stress, your hormones, your movement, and your environment. If you drop your calories too low, your body will adapt. Increase your activity, your body will adapt. Get less sleep, it will change how much fat you burn and how much muscle you build. We call this metabolic adaptation. And if you ever dieted really hard and then stalled, you've felt it. An interesting study we reviewed here. This is by Hall et al. It was done in 2016. It took 2 groups, one on ultra-processed food and one on whole foods. Same calories, same macros. The processed group ate 500 plus more calories per day, and that is without realising it, and they gained fat. The whole food group, they lost weight without trying. And that isn't about willpower, that is just biology. Hormones, the hidden code behind every diet result. Let's dig deeper now. When you eat, your body releases hormones to interpret what's happening. Insulin stores nutrients. It helps shuttle carbohydrates to muscle and fat cells. Ghrelin tells you to eat, elevated by poor sleep and high stress diets. Leptin tells you to stop eating, but this can be suppressed by chronic dieting. Cortisol, the stress hormone, increases cravings, belly fat, and muscle breakdown. mTOR stimulates muscle growth, which will be triggered by protein and resistance training. Thyroid hormones T3 and T4. They regulate your metabolic rate, and they will drop when your calories are too low. How many times have you heard or have you said this? Unless, when I hear this, I want to know everything about them. Things like their hormone pattern and not just what they have in their MyFitnessPal. And there's a good reason for this. Now let's look at a study. 5 of my clients, and this is just in 2025, bearing in mind this is filmed in April, who have been tested and confirmed that they have low testosterone. Now these are all high performers from varied backgrounds, from 33 up to 60. Some of them did train, resistance training quite frequently. Some of them done a little bit of cardio, but most of them did not train at all. All were fatigued, low motivation, poor muscle tone, poor sleep, low sex drive, and gaining a lot of belly fat. So what did we do? We arranged for some blood work to be done, and all 5 of them had very low testosterone. So why is that? Sometimes this can just be down to genetic things or their own body makeup. But in most of these cases, there's often other things. Things we did notice, the trends in these cases, there was not enough dietary fat. They had all been through a various cycle of different diets, mostly fasting, carnivore, and a couple of them had tried soup diets multiple times. The soup diets were normally coming from the older 2 who had low testosterone. All of them who didn't notice at the start had some form of chronic stress coming from some areas in their life. One of the biggest trends we did see, they were skipping breakfast, and in many of the cases the first meal they would have was lunch. In others, all they were having for breakfast was tea or coffee, and that's not even drinking water. High glycemic index carbs in all cases was high. In most cases as well, that was late into the evening, after working, grabbing snacks like sweets, candy, desserts with the evening meals, and going away to watch a movie after a long day's work with crisps or chocolate or some form of sweets. And there was a mixture of poor sleep hygiene. Generally going to bed late at night, sitting on their phones till late at night, and then having to get up very early in the morning, being waken up by their alarm because they were all working. We build each plan when they joined us. We started off with all of these prioritising protein, and they were all and continued for a long time now to be in at least their body weight in pounds in grams of protein. We encourage fat intake, but mostly from fish, avocado, nuts, olive oil, and we did encourage a little bit of saturated fat, which can be great for boosting testosterone. We looked at their carb timing because, as I said before, a lot of this was high glycemic index carbs that they were having at night time, while they were in massive calorie surpluses also. So we focused more on strategic carb timing, especially around their workouts once they did start using the gym. For the ones who don't use the gym, we were just more focused on the type of carbs they were eating. And across all of them, although it did take a lot of convincing, there's no more fasting, no more restriction diets, and they're all now eating from all food groups, although some of them have some minor alterations based on how they feel with single foods, not whole food groups. So if we come across something that doesn't work well for their body, we just remove it. Simple as that. Personalised to that individual, and everyone was dealt with individually. So within 6 to 8 weeks, testosterone in all individuals had improved, and later some of them did look at and explore the options of getting TRT. However, that was in the more extreme cases. Body composition, it did improve dramatically, especially in the first 2 months. Mood, libido, confidence, sex, sleep, and quality of life in all cases all improved. One thing that does get a bit annoying is the consistent complaints of having to buy new clothes. Now this isn't calorie maths, this is endocrinology. Get another real life example. Let's look at another real life example. Ray, now let's look at when calories are not the problem. When I first met Ray, he was eating easily 6,000 calories a day, and that was from 3 meals and some snacks on top of that. And that was also including skipping breakfast. So he was having 2 to 3 meals of 3-course meals and massively overeating. Now his body weight had crept up year after year to the point where he couldn't even look at himself in a photograph. And like many individuals, Ray is an exceptionally hard worker, very active guy in his home life, but his body composition was not what he desired or which would have been deemed healthy. Probably because of his activity at home and at work, was probably helping mask what may have came in the future if he didn't make changes. So what were some of the things he was seeing? Okay, he's a tall individual, but he was weighing just under 150 kilograms. He had poor recovery. He was leading towards poor health. He was getting regular brain fog, sore joints, and finding simple tasks getting a little bit more difficult and more difficult each day. So we ran a full review. Now yeah, he was eating a hell of a lot of food, but his macronutrient, the structure of that was absolute chaos. Carbs, going by a rough estimate before we started tracking, was easily 70 to 80% of his diet every day. Now that started off with the worst kind of carbohydrates and topped off with vegetables on top. So to be fair to him, he was making some efforts to make healthy choices. Protein on most days, even though with such high calories, was sometimes under 60 grams of protein per day. And fats, which was mostly processed oils, quite often from the fried foods, especially around break time, where he would get some breakfast items. Now, very similar to the people we discussed previously had low testosterone. We flipped it round. So we made lean protein a priority. We changed his fat and carb sources, encouraged more activity throughout the day, something he was already good at, but we wanted to make sure there was a focus to ensure this was consistent every day. As he was keen to make quick changes, we added 20-minute lightweight sessions to help him build a little bit of muscle quicker each evening after his work. We cut late night grazing, as he was often taking food away to store for later on in the evening. We increased his water intake, and we tried to get more water instead of drinking a cup of tea every hour. So what was the results of all this? Well, the first 2 months, his weight shot down massively. Then we had a little bit of a psychological problem. Due to the extra protein and the resistance training, his weight creeped up ever so slightly for a short period of time. And as many of you have experienced, either as a coach, as a client, or an individual who this has happened to, in many cases when they're focused on the scale weight, this can be demoralising. However, he stuck with the plan and he continued losing fat and looking better day after day. As his weight came down, his sleep improved. As he was also preparing for his wedding, his body composition had changed so much over a few months that he had to revisit the tailor 2 times to get his suit adjusted. His energy, confidence and well-being were through the roof. Again, it's not magic. And this is a person who was eating ridiculous amounts of calories, who was now struggling to eat nutrient-dense foods, and all he was doing is just fueling his body with the food it requires. Why? A calorie can be misleading. Yes, a calorie is a unit of energy, but how your body responds to it, that's a totally different story. If I give you 400 calories of fruit juice, a whey protein shake, chicken breast and avocado, or a donut, your body reacts in 4 different ways. Blood sugar spike or stability, hormone activation or suppression, muscle signaling or fat storage, satiety or rebound hunger. That's why whole food or processed food matters. That's why macronutrient balance matters. And that is why timing and context beats raw numbers. Now let's look at the myth of metabolic damage. Let's clear something up. Metabolic damage isn't real in the way it is normally sold, but metabolic suppression is. If you starve yourself for months, if you train 6 times a week without recovery, if you sleep 5 hours every night, if you cut out entire food groups and spike your stress, your metabolism will downregulate. You burn fewer calories, you feel hungrier, you lose muscle, and you'll feel fat faster the moment you cheat. We see it every day in clients who have come to me. They tell me their diet history, and they've done crash diets, juice cleanses, or back-to-back fasting, keto diets without structure. There's an easy fix. Eat to build muscle. Balance your macros. Sleep like it matters. Eat enough to signal safety to your body. And eat for your goals and your body. So what are we actually comparing? When someone says, veganism cleared my skin, carnivore cured my anxiety, fasting gave me energy, they might be right, but you need to ask, what signals were you sending your body before? Did veganism help you because you stopped eating dairy? Or was it because you started eating plants? Did carnivore help you because you cut out junk food? Or was it simply because you started eating protein? And what's sustainable for you? Because no diet matters if it doesn't match your lifestyle. It doesn't support your hormones, it doesn't keep you strong, it doesn't keep you sane, and the food types are not available to you or sustainable. That's why when we compare diets, we are not comparing willpower. We are comparing internal responses to external rules. Next, we're going to shift gears, because people mostly don't choose diets based on science. They choose based on fear, emotion, belief, or sometimes just belonging. And this is where things start to get really interesting. Why do we choose the diets we do? So now we understand how the diets affect our bodies, let's look at something deeper. So why do we pick the diets we do in the first place? Why do some people swear by fasting, others go plant-based, and others cut out entire food groups? And others, they cut out entire food groups they used to love. The answer isn't just logic. It's psychology, emotion, belief, and identity. We don't choose diets logically, we choose them emotionally. Most people, they won't sit down and compare diets based on science research, looking at things like glycemic index, amino absorption, and microbiome adversity before choosing a diet. That's how this works. Instead, here's how it usually goes. You look in the mirror, you don't like what you see or how you feel. You have energy crashes every afternoon. Your doctor says your blood pressure is rising, or maybe you're leading towards an early grave. You can't keep up with your kids. Your blood sugars are rising and you're becoming pre-diabetic. You wake up tired and inflamed. A loved one gets sick and suddenly it becomes life or death. That's when you are vulnerable. Your rational brain takes a back seat and your emotional brain takes the wheel. Then you go on social media and something like this will hit your feed. I lost only 30 pounds eating meat. Fasting reversed my pre-diabetes. Veganism, it cured my anxiety. Keto, it changed my life. Now you don't just read it, you feel it. There's hope, there's clarity, and there's a new identity to try on. Now you don't just choose the diet, you choose the whole movement. Diet is an identity, the tribal effect. Suddenly you're not just somebody trying to fast, you are a faster. You're not just somebody who's eating plants, you are a vegan. You're likely to find a Facebook group, a subreddit, a podcast, a hashtag, a meal plan, code of conduct, flag to wave, and yep, you'll get a label. Now there is something beautiful about that. Humans are wired for connection. We crave certainty and we want to belong. But when identity becomes stronger than feedback, when you start defending the plan, instead of listening to their body or the science, that's when people get stuck, or worse, hurt. Now let's look at a case study from one of my clients. Joseph is one of the most dedicated clients I have ever coached. She was hypertrophy training 5 to 6 times a week. Cold showers, OMAD, zero sugar, meditation, and journaling, all of it. She told me fasting made her feel great. She loved the mental clarity, the simplicity, and the minimal impact on the environment and animals. But her body, she was losing muscle, and she was visually very soft. She was constantly fatigued. She had no libido, joint pain, and she was struggling to keep up with her joint partner who was not fasting. Now we always had quite good interesting conversation. I said jokingly, mate, you are training like a beast, but you are feeling like a monk. So in these situations when somebody is passionate about what they do, we didn't just throw away our lifestyle. This is about you, not about other people. So we didn't just throw away our fasting lifestyle. We had to build around it. And that is mainly because she wouldn't deviate from a maximum of a 4-hour eating window. So what did we do? I sat down and I went through some studies to show some opposing views that might explain to her why she's looking soft. We prioritised protein, but as you know, eating 170 grams of protein is what we worked out she required, is not easy in a 4-hour period. So we tried to spread it out to allow as much chance as possible for her to be able to absorb it and use it effectively. We increased her calories. We included rice and fruit post-workout. We tried to reintroduce refeeds every Sunday. And we did have a bit more focus on omega-3s, electrolytes, and encouraged good sleep hygiene. So not surprisingly, within 4 weeks, libido returned, sleep deepened, strength improved, recovery was back, and she could not believe how lean and hard she felt in many places, quoting, "I have felt muscles in places I have never felt them before." But a month later, after losing 4 kilograms, even after increasing your calories, she contacted me and explained she wanted to go back to strict 1 meal a day. Now after seeing that transformation, it was very hard for me to swallow. However, as I said at the start, this is about her, not about me. But she was very honest. She says, look, this is the best I've looked and felt in my life, but because of my beliefs that fasting kills all the negative cells in your body, detoxing the cells and possibly fighting cancer, this is her beliefs, I'm not saying this is true, she wanted to go back to that. And I respect that, that's her choice. But that's the power of somebody's identity and their belief. It was so strong, she did not care how much better she looked. even experiencing firsthand the improvements in her performance and body composition. And that's where belief versus biology comes in. When you believe something is working, even if on paper it's failing, it is hard to let go. We need to believe we are doing the right thing. It gives us control, gives us certainty, it gives us direction. And the more public you are about that belief, posting about it, joining groups, defending it online, the harder it is for you to backtrack without feeling that you have failed. Now that's not science, that is human nature. The diet religion effect. We live in a world where people no longer say, "This is how I eat." They say, "This is who I am." And that is why you see things like vegans being tacked for eating eggs while they were on holiday. Carnivores being shamed by the more passionate ones for having wine or berries. Fasters judging others for eating before noon. And gym bros being mocked for eating fruit. We've moralised food. Good, bad, clean, dirty, toxic and holy. It's not nutrition anymore, it is like religion. But guess what? Every expert that you follow, the ones that are leading the tribes, some of them unknowingly, they all bend the rules. Now Dr. Jason Fung, he's a fasting guru. He eats out his window sometimes. Dr. Neil Barnard, vegan advocate, he has been saying a few times, attending events, eating dairy-based pastries. Dr. Sean Baker, carnivore leader, publicly drinks wine and he eats fries. And that's not because they're frauds, that is because they are normal humans. It's the online echo chambers that turns nuance into gospel. Now let's look at a study. This is about social judgment in food behaviour. So Rose and et al. In 2015 at the University of Pennsylvania, he explored how people judged others based on their food choices. What the findings were, foods were labelled moral or immoral, regardless of health impacts. People would assign virtue or shame based on their plates. Dieters were judged most harshly when deviating from public statements. Now that's not about health, that is about purity signalling, and that is not helping anyone. So let's look at Dimmitra. If you've watched any of my videos before, Dimmitra is becoming very famous. So Dimmitra was a serial dieter. Dimmitra is a Greek lady, she's in her mid-50s and she has tried every diet you could think of. When she came to me, she had a massive history of dieting. And it went from everything from low fat in the 90s, slimming world, juice cleanses, detoxes, a little bit intermittent fasting, you know, you could think of. And each one did work for her until it didn't. She'd lose 5 kilograms, gain back 6. Lose 10, gain back 12. And every attempt chipped away at her confidence. And every time she adopted a new identity, I'm a slimmer now, I'm trying keto, I'm trying fasting. I'm keto now, I'm a faster, I'm a slimmer. All these new identities, she started to believe the plan was failing and she was broken. But when we stripped everything back and asked one question, how do you want to live? Everything changed. We rebuilt her plan around her. We built it around prioritising protein, but we built it around things she liked, which she does like traditional Greek foods. So we built it around feta, legumes, grilled meat, and her favourite pita. She enjoyed, for convenience, a plain meal replacement on workdays. Monday to Friday, she would have 1 or 2 meal replacement protein shakes. At the weekend, she would return back to whole foods because she had time to cook and prepare the foods and she wasn't working all day. We had a big focus on fats, fibre, hydration, and ensuring that she went to bed earlier so she could get up before her alarm every morning. Sleep alone for Dimmitra made a massive difference. Now they were just the immediate things we looked at, and one of the things we'd look at for most people. But beyond that, we started to look at Dimmitra's blood work, and she went away for multiple blood, including hormone checks, to ensure we could optimise and personalise our approach to Dimmitra's nutritional enhancements. Now, Dimmitra is something like 62 pounds down. She dropped dress sizes. Now, she had started off wearing her husband's very large. Now George is a large guy. She was wearing George's shirts. She was just having to cut them a bit, obviously, because she's a bit shorter. So she's went from wearing her husband's large shirts, extra large probably, down to now wearing a size small. That is impressive. She's now wearing clothes that she has not touched in 40 years. She recently got into a size small bikini. I don't think something she's ever really worn. And she has now managed to fit in her prom dress that she wore when she was 16. Now these things, it's really hard to ignore. And it's great seeing Dimmitra going through that emotional roller coaster of getting into these clothes and the confidence boosting back to a place where she never believed she would be at 55. Now throughout this journey each month, she was gaining energy, you could see she was getting happier, and her confidence was going through the roof. Actually at some point it was quite irritating. Sorry Dimmitra, but you know, I think it was great to see. She stopped labeling herself with all these different diet labels, and she stopped limiting her self-belief. One of the things that's held her back over the last 40 years. So she was no longer doing a diet, she was eating a personalised diet that was for her. So why do people stay in diets that are not working? Often the pain of changing identity is much worse than having to change habits. Quitting a plan can feel like betraying a belief, losing a tribe and admitting to failure. And that is even when the data is saying it is not working. That is why people stay vegan while they're struggling with fatigue. They keep fasting even when they're losing muscle. They stick to carnivore even when they're bored and they're bloated. And they cling to keto while they are dreaming of toast. They don't want to start over. Understandably, they want to win at the game they're already in. But here's the truth. Your biology doesn't care what tribe you're in. Your cells don't care what influencers say. And your metabolism doesn't speak hashtags. So diets, they are not religion, they are tools. Your body is not a battlefield for internet arguments. You're not meant to choose sides, you're meant to choose strategy. And that strategy may change with age, with stress, with goals, with your life. The best eaters in the world are not ideological, they're adaptable. There is a difference between short-term success and long-term transformation. So what can you do today? First of all, detach identity from your eating style. Remove your label. You're not keto, you're not vegan, you're not carnivore. You are you. Track results, not beliefs. Energy, sleep, digestion, mood, body composition, scale weight. They all tell a story. Don't moralize food. Sin by eating a cookie. You did not sin by eating a cookie. You ate a cookie. Big deal. If you need to, find a community that supports flexibility. Not just supports flexibility, but they support you. Avoid echo chambers. Avoid nuance, not noise. And lastly, check if your current plan is working. And if it's not, you can pivot, you can make those changes, you are allowed. So now we've looked at why people choose these diets. Let's look at what these diets are doing inside your body. Now we're going to break down carnivore, vegan, fasting, Mediterranean, paleo, keto, and we will also be looking at balanced. We'll look at what works, what breaks down, and what the real experts say, and also what they don't. Chapter 3. Okay, we've just why people choose diets. Identity, tribalism, a need for control, or sometimes just clarity in a chaotic world. And there is also a small percentage of people who are doing it through disease or some form of illness. So let's cut through all the noise and ask the real question. What does your diet actually do to your body? Not what it claims, not what it hashtags, what it actually does hormonally. I'm going to go deep here. Hormones, blood sugar, gut microbiome, nutrient absorption, and yes, all of the stuff that most of the influencers never look at. We're going to break down the 7 major diet types and give them the physiological audit that they deserve. When it comes to nutrition, most experts agree on 6 principles that make a diet effective, and that's not just for fat loss, but for long-term health, disease prevention, and performance. Now these are the drivers. Is it a diverse food source? Is there macronutrient balance? Is sustainability? Disease prevention, and its ability to meet your body composition needs or energy needs. So regardless of what diet you follow, whether it's carnivore, vegan, keto, paleo, Mediterranean, balanced, whatever it may be, the real test for anyone is how the diet affects you and how well it meets these 6 foundational needs. Let's take a look. Start off with carnivore. Meat and nothing else. Rich for carnivore. Eat like our ancestors, steak, water, salt. Remove all plants to eliminate so-called toxins, like oxalates, lectins, and phthalates. So as you'll be aware, carnivores in general do have specific things they need to meet, and many people follow slightly different variations of it. Some of them eat bacon, some of them eat butter, some of them also add fish. So in short, carnivore diets often report a huge drop-off in bloating, joint pain, and inflammation. A 2021 study by Brown et al. Found a 60% reduction in IBS symptoms in the first 6 weeks. Now here's why. Mostly highly processed healthy foods, even ones that are labelled gluten-free or low-fat, contain additives, gums, seed oils, and fermentable sugars that disrupt gut function. Removing all plants removes all the noise. Sounds great, but that is also part of the problem. So the cost, fibre starvation. No prebiotic fibre equals no food for your gut microbiome. Over time, your microbial diversity shrinks, which is linked to IBS, anxiety, and possibly even cancer over time. Number 2, thyroid suppression. Zero carbohydrate availability may reduce conversion of T4 to active T3, which is critical for metabolism. Now this is particularly important for women who are under chronic stress. Number 3, sex hormones. Animal fats do support testosterone production, but the absence of carbs and plants and plant polyphenols may limit nitric oxide, libido, and recovery. Insulin resistance. Number 4, insulin resistance. A 2024 meta-analysis found that 20% of long-term carnivore dieters had elevated fasting glucose and early stage insulin resistance. So let's look at a real life example, looking at Tom. Tom, he came in battling migraines and gut issues. He had tried everything. 1 meal a day, other versions of fasting, and he had tried cutting out various things. He went full carnivore and boom, no migraine, but he was never off the toilet. That being said, he was 4 kilos down though, and he was mentally sharp. But by week 10, he had hit a wall. Energy down, and now he had constipation. Worst of all, he was craving bread and cakes like many others. So at this point, Tom was willing to try something else. We had discussed that maybe going extreme to the carnivore diet after eating some of the unhealthy things maybe wasn't the best first step. So what we'd done is we added in some more fibre. We focused on carbs that were more medium to low end of the glycemic index. We added in a lot more oily fish, dairy, and even he went back to eating whole grain breads. The migraines didn't return, either did the weight. So in reality, rather than going to the extremes of the carnivore diet, he just needed to relax the high glycemic index carbohydrates, avoid simple, refined sugars, and now he's okay. In Tom's case as well, Tom is an advanced lifter and he is a highly active individual. And we do speak regularly, and he is happy now that he can enjoy carbs again. So although we only looked at some unique benefits that were proven in studies, because there is not actually that many in human trials, my verdict from it may be a powerful intervention tool for some, but for a lifestyle that is necessary for most. Without targeted food or lab work or analysis to see how your body is working inside, two of which aren't really goals of the actual diet, it can quite quickly backfire. It is also extremely restrictive and can cause problems in high intensity sports, things like bodybuilding and strength competitions. You may be massively affected. Now that's not just my opinion, that is the science, and if you look about many of the carnivore groups online, there is many people on there who do say when bodybuilding, powerlifting or other high intense sports, they will revert back to using carbohydrates, as they will openly admit they are a useful tool. So I have some notes here. As I said at the start, I will give you my verdict based on the information I looked at, and for each of the diets I will give you the comparison to the 6 things that everyone agrees a diet should be. So diverse food source. It's severely limited, animal products only. So is it a diverse food source? Well, no, it is severely limited to animal products only. Is the macronutrient balance? No, it's extremely high in fat and protein, but avoids carbs. So you do the correct macronutrient balance. As it removes carbs, the answer to that is no. Although you will have high protein and high fat, without carbs, that has to be no. Micronutrient balance. Without careful planning, it may be missing key vitamins, minerals and fibre with removing carbs. Sustainability. This may be something that is very difficult to manage over time and stick at, especially when you're out at an event, when you're eating out, or different things. I believe it is manageable, but it would be very difficult. So, disease prevention. One of the biggest things for the carnivore diet that you do read in the groups, although not fully backed by science, it is very good for disease prevention. However, as the science isn't currently at that stage to be able to prove that yet, what we have so far is it may help with short-term inflammation, but risky for long-term heart or metabolic health. So body composition and energy needs. It is good for rapid weight loss. In some cases, like Tom, who was on the toilet a lot, it may not be the type of fat loss that you're looking for. In other cases, there is evidence of good rapid fat loss, but can impact your thyroid and your testosterone over a long time. So looking at vegan now, plants only. So a diet that is solely plant-based, no meat, no eggs, no dairy. It is marketed as heart healthy, sustainable and clean. So the science. Vegan diets can be metabolically beneficial. In 2023, to 10 to 20% drop in LDL cholesterol. They also found improved blood pressure within 12 weeks of adopting a high fibre, plant inclusive diet. So fibre improves satiety, feeds beneficial gut bacteria, and it does slow glucose absorption. Plant polyphenols, like quercetin, in onions or catechins or green tea, also boost endothelial function and blood flow. But most vegans rely on soy and grain products, so nutrient shortfalls may include vitamin B12, essential for red and blood cell health, iron non-hem, which is less absorbable than animal-based products, zinc, choline and creatine, linked to brain health and hormone function, DHA and EPA, omega-3, which are critical for inflammation and brain health. Now here's the sad part. Many fall into the modern vegan junk food trap. Eating fake meat, sweetened oat milk. Eating fake meats, sweetened oat milk, and ultra-processed snacks. They spike blood sugar levels, and they lack protein, along with all the other known risks by eating processed foods. And that's not to mention the hormonal downsides. Studies show that low fat intake, under 20% of your diet, can reduce the production of your required sex hormones. Plant-based phytoestrogens may alter your hormone balance, especially in those estrogen-sensitive conditions. High oxalate loads from spinach, almonds and beets can contribute towards kidney stones or mineral malabsorption. Now let's look at real-life results. Let's look at Lauren. So Lauren, 28, she turned vegan after watching a famous, funded by vegan companies, documentary. She did speak about it a lot, but after 2 months, her energy had dropped. 2 months later, low energy, big drop off in muscle, and her shape had changed drastically. She had brain fog and very pale skin. So as she was quite passionate about sticking to this diet, she went and got some blood work done. So after getting her blood work done, she had signs of low iron, low ferritin, and low vitamin B12. So after she visited the doctor, we didn't really need to try and change her beliefs, because actually Lauren was caught sneaking bacon rolls from the breakfast tray. However, she didn't have a complete relapse. What she tried eating slightly different things, and she actually initially went pescatarian. She introduced food into her diet by introducing mostly just seafood into her diet, and to be honest with you, it didn't last very long. There was a lot of performance issues as she does sports, and she wasn't happy with the amount of muscle she was using. But initially she did try various types of plant-based proteins. She was taking lots of multivitamins. She did try hard to use things like lentils instead of the fake meats. And she did say with a bit more focus and education, she did see energy start to come back. But however, as I said, she did revert back to fish and animal products in the end. So due to continue to explore different diets, and she wanted to try different things, and we ended up not working together, but we keep in touch for a long time because I was very interested to see how her journey with trying different things, which in all honesty was more about moral, ethical reasons than health. But being a competitive person, they did overlap sometimes when it started to affect her performance and her physique. So aside from ethical reasons, which are a personal choice, regardless of people's opinions, veganism can be a powerful choice It is nutrient dense, but it must be well structured. However, it does become biologically risky when driven by ideology and dominated by heavily processed foods. We'll dive more into nutritional knowledge later, but for now, it is important to understand that a vegan diet requires a lot of nutritional knowledge and a lot of planning. That can be difficult for those with a solid foundation in nutrition, making it a challenge for the general public to follow effectively or to meet essential nutrient targets, especially when aiming for specific goals in body composition, athletic performance, or long-term health. Many vegans do come to accept that they will need supplements to plug nutritional gaps, and that is something they'll have to accept for the rest of their lives. And while that's not inherently a problem, it is worth noting that supplement companies are loosely regulated. What you see on the label, what is promised in terms of quality, is often not the case. It's very important if you are going to be taking supplements, you ensure they're third-party inspected and hold something like an NSF for sports certification. They will check to ensure what is on the tin is what is being sold to you. So other than for ethical reasons, which I fully get, I cannot find any evidence or logical reason as to why somebody needs to restrict themselves to this degree. So let's look at the 6 key points. Is it a diverse food source? It is highly diverse if whole foods are used. If you rely on processed junk, no, it is not. Macronutrient balance. So quite often the case with vegan diets, they are low in protein and sometimes struggle for fat. However, if you are smart with this, you can make it work. Micronutrient balance. It will require supplements from B12, iron, DHA and zinc. If you're okay with that, again, you can make it work. So sustainability. Ethically and environmentally, it is sound. One thing that will be hard though is to sustain it long term and meet your targets with limited nutritional knowledge. Strong evidence for cardiovascular benefits, and that is when whole foods are emphasised. Body composition energy. So can work well if protein and fats are included, but can often lead to fatigue or poor recovery if it's not well structured. So intermittent fasting, timed eating. Don't change what you eat, change when you eat. From 16 to 8 to 1 meal a day to alternate day fasting. The goal is to rest your digestive system and reset your insulin function. There are many other reported benefits which are still inconclusive in human trials or backed by research. So the science now. Fasting improves glucose metabolism, it lowers triglycerides and can enhance autophagy, which is cellular cleanup. Johnson in 2022 showed that 60% of participants improved blood glucose with 16 to 8 time-restricted eating. The other benefits it showed: lowered appetite through hormonal changes and ghrelin adaptation, increased mental clarity via neuropinephrine and ketone production. There was also reported weight loss due to caloric compression. But there is a line. So women on prolonged fasts may experience disrupted menstrual cycles, low T3, or infertility signals. So muscle mass is at risk if protein is not prioritised, especially with 1 meal a day or longer term fasts. So I'm just going to read this off of the study here. So if a 200-pound man requires 200 grams of protein daily to preserve muscle mass during a calorie deficit, can that amount realistically be consumed and, more importantly, digested and utilised in a single meal? The evidence and the research says no. Several studies, including Arteta et al. In 2013, suggest that muscle protein synthesis is maximised when protein is consumed in moderate doses, 20 to 40 grams, every 3 to 4 hours. And excessive protein beyond that in one setting is less efficiently absorbed and oxidized rather than being used for muscle building. Therefore, 1 meal a day may significantly reduce muscle retention, particularly in lean individuals or those who are in a deficit. So off the back of that study, you'll probably notice something there. Bodybuilders often eat 30 to 50 grams of protein and they'll normally eat every 2 to 3 hours. The reason for that is basically what I explained in the study. And if they don't do that, they'll run out of hours in a day when they're awake to eat all of their requirements to build their muscle. I understand that not everyone wants to be a bodybuilder, but you will not be a bodybuilder or have that physique unless you push yourself to that limit and eat in that day in, day out. What you will notice, the protein required for muscle retention isn't far off what a bodybuilder eats in a day. And high cortisol from extended fasting can lead to sleep disruption, fat storage and arterial issues, fat storage and adrenal issues. So let's look at my client Joseph. Joseph was weight training intensely 5 to 6 times a week, eating 1 meal a day. She was lean, soft, and she was exhausted. Her performance was down, her libido was gone, her sleep was poor, and her protein intake was under 40 grams per day. So after much negotiating, we managed to move her to a 4-hour eating window and bumped her up to 170 grams of protein per day. We added in rice and fruit post-workout. Libido, sleep and strength went through the roof, and visually harder and leaner physique within 4 weeks. The interesting bit here is she quickly wanted to go back to fasting because of her beliefs were overriding her physical and mental benefits that she was feeling. And as you will see throughout this research, there are many examples where people's beliefs override the feedback loop that is coming back to them about how they think, how they feel, and the physical and mental changes they're experiencing. It is something we'll touch on later though. So opinion here for me for intermittent fasting, based on the research, the things that I've looked at in my client experiences. I do think intermittent fasting can be transformational, but like many of the other diets, it's probably down to the person's very poor start point. If you've got a very poor start point, or you're overeating and you're morbidly obese, and you start fasting, you've reduced your calorie intake, you're probably going to look massively better, you're going to feel better, and you're going to think that it is fasting that has done all this alone. But for me, it's not a one size fits all, and I do think doing it a couple of times a year just to allow the body to have a rest is not a terrible idea. One of the biggest problems, as I did touch on above, is it becomes very, very difficult, almost scientifically impossible, to eat the required amount of protein to optimize your health, your muscle retention and your performance. And it is very likely to destroy your metabolic rate, and long-term recovery and increased stress are probably going to be an issue. Now that's what I'm taking from the research. So the 6 points here. Is it a diverse food source? Depends entirely on the food choices within the eating window, as it isn't restricting any. So its macronutrient balance can often be neglected because most of the focus is on the times you're eating and not what you're eating. However, it is perfectly possible. Micronutrient balance can be met but easily overlooked in minimal meals like OMAD. Sustainability. It does work for some. There is evidence out there that people report back they feel great. Most others experience burnout or hormone disruption. Disease prevention. Shows promise for blood sugar and insulin sensitivity improvements. So body composition, energy. So it's excellent if paired with adequate protein. Harmful if muscle is lost due to poor intake or not being able to eat enough protein to support our metabolisms with such limited eating window. So now that we've looked at these 3 diets, let's move on to the next ones. Let's look at balanced, keto, paleo, and even the Mediterranean diet. These are often seen as more moderate or mainstream diets. But again, don't let the labels fool you. Each of these diets does have nuance that affects metabolic function, hormone signaling, training capacity, and lifestyle sustainability. And each has a fan base, an expert base, and that often misrepresents what the diet is actually about. So let's continue to break it down. So the balanced diet, the government's golden child. So what is it? It's generally 50% carbs, 20% protein and 30% fat. Think the NHS, think my plate. Now it is a bit of everything. There's no foods that are demonised. It's practical, inclusive, and it does appear to be the middle ground between extremes. So on paper, this is a smart framework, but most people don't follow it properly. And that's what can be the problem. Well, actually, in this case, by following it properly, probably is what's going wrong. So I have some notes here. Issues with execution. So is carb dominant? Most people are eating 67% fat, not 50%. And that includes juice, cereal, toast, pasta, and whatever snacks. So because of this, everything is on the table. There's always a risk of having ultra-processed foods, which the studies show 50% of the diet most often comes from processed snacks or convenience foods. And that's where sometimes lack of restriction can cause the same problems. So protein shortfall. The average adult in the UK or the US consumes around 60 grams of protein per day. Now that is far below the 1.6 to 2.2 kilograms or the 0.73 to 1 gram per pound of body weight that is needed to support lean muscle mass. There is a lot of confusion often about protein intake. Studies do show that up to 1.25 grams per pound of body weight can be optimal in terms of building muscle. Also, some of the studies show that going beyond that, up to 1.5 grams per pound of body weight, in some cases may offer added benefits. In other cases, the evidence is inconclusive. So let's break down what that looks like for a 200-pound man. So you have 1.25 grams per pound of body weight would equal 250 grams of protein per day. If he follows the widely promoted balanced guidelines of 2,500 calories per day, that would mean 250 grams of protein equals 1,000 calories is 40% of his total intake. However, standard balanced diets only allocate 20% to protein, which equals just 125 grams per day or 0.625 grams per pound of body weight, half of what may be optimal. This highlights a serious flaw. Even a sedentary man is likely burning well in excess of 2,500 calories per day, depending on muscle mass, activity, and body composition. And yet, mainstream guidance still drastically underestimates your protein goals, especially for your body type. A 2023 study by Taylor et al. Showed that only 30% of participants met their protein needs. And those who didn't saw zero changes in lean mass over 12 weeks. And that was including exercise. So hormones and satiety. Insulin spikes are common with high glycemic index carbs. Looking at things like cereal and white bread. Leptin resistance can occur when carbs dominate and protein and fiber are too low. Post-meal crashes and hunger are common with low protein breakfasts. So let's look at another one of my clients, Silka. So Silka is a full-time working mum of 2. She's a Herbalife supervisor and she is a professional model where her appearance is directly linked to her job. From the outside, with people like this, it may appear that it is effortless and they are just genetically blessed and everything is easy for them. But even with decades of experience in health, nutrition, fitness and Pilates, she will still hit the same walls that most people do when life gets busy. She had always followed what most people would call a balanced diet, a mixture of carbohydrates, protein and fats, which generally followed the government guidance, which would be around 50% carbs, 30% fat and 20 grams of protein. But despite eating health-conscious meals and staying active, her energy was inconsistent, her cravings increased at night time, and she felt her body wasn't responding the way it used to. That's when she reached out to me for support, not because she lacked knowledge, but even seasoned professionals benefit from a second set of eyes. As coaches, we often need that outside perspective to reflect on our own routines objectively. So together we reviewed her current nutritional strategy, and we found the main problem to be that she was lacking in protein. And due to her busy lifestyle, it was gradually getting worse. Like many busy people, her protein intake had gradually fallen below her needs, especially for somebody balancing high output, family life, and a busy modelling career. We didn't change everything. We brought structure and intentionality back into her routine. The biggest shifts, ensuring we prioritise protein at every meal, but also raising her protein target to match her performance and her physique goals, and making fibre and healthy fats a consistent part of her routine and not just add-ons when time allowed it. And one thing she has always been exceptionally good at is strategically using supplements to meet her goals, especially when travelling. So Silka had already been carrying supplements in her travel bag, they were in her car, and they were dotted about in places that she went frequently to ensure that she could stay on track with her multivitamins. And that played a huge role in helping her stay on track. With the right focus and a few minor adjustments, she started to feel better, perform better, and she could see measurable changes very quickly. So the takeaway from that, even highly experienced individuals with access to great food and nutritional knowledge can drift away what is optimal for them. For Silka though, it wasn't about cutting out whole food groups, it was solely about focusing back on prioritising protein and making sure in her chaotic life that she got the macronutrients and the micronutrients that she needed to achieve her desired outcome. And when you do have an incredibly busy lifestyle like Silka, just a gentle reminder that success doesn't come from being perfect. It becomes often from being adaptable, from being flexible, having a plan in place, and ensuring that you are able to achieve your goals regardless of what life throws in front of you. So what is the verdict? A balanced diet works when structured with protein first, fibre focused, and portion aware habits. Left to the food industry, it's going to be a metabolic mess. So is it a diverse food source? Well yes, it covers all food groups. Plants, proteins, healthy fats. Nothing is excluded. Macronutrient balance. Flexible and adaptable, though often undelivers on protein without structure if you follow some of the guidance. Macronutrient balance. Strong if whole foods are prioritised. Sustainability. Socially easy and culturally adaptable. Disease prevention. This is one that is backed mostly by institutional support and public health data. Body composition and energy. So it's very effective when guided properly, but vague messaging, lack of nutritional knowledge, and having all foods available can lead to overconsumption or poor choices. So looking at keto now, low carb, high fat. So the keto pitch. Burn fat for fuel by removing almost all the carbs. When we're looking at carbs, it is usually between 30 to 50 grams daily or under. The body shifts to ketone production, improves insulin sensitivity and lowering your appetite. Processed foods stabilizes blood sugar, glucose and hormones. It may benefit neurological disorders like epilepsy and Alzheimer's, and it may force food mindfulness. No more mindless snacking. But it is very hard to do right. Too much fat, not enough protein. Keto isn't a free-for-all on butter and bacon. Electrolyte depletion. Without enough sodium, potassium and magnesium, you feel dizzy, crampy and exhausted. Training performance drops. Athletes often report reduced output in strength and high-intensity interval training. Long-term hormonal effects. Low carb for too long may reduce active T3 and testosterone. Taylor in 2023 reported up to 50% dropout rate at 6 months in most trials. Even disciplined clients often need refeed days or carb cycling to sustain results. So my verdict, keto can be a metabolic reset button, especially for overweight, insulin resistant or sugar addicted individuals. But long-term success requires protein focus, electrolyte strategy, and ongoing flexibility and determination to stick at a long term. So let's look at the 6 key things that we look for in a diet. So diverse food source, excludes many fruits, grains and legumes. Macronutrient balance, high fat, moderate protein, minimal carbs, and it is very restrictive. Micronutrient balance, so it's low in potassium, magnesium and fibre without careful planning. Sustainability, it is hard to stick by, as shown by the dropout rates in the study, especially for athletes. Disease prevention, effective for insulin resistance, but inconclusive for long-term health. Body composition, energy. So it is good for appetite control and it is good for initial fat loss. It can be very weak for athletes or high output individuals. So let's look at paleo now. Eating like a caveman, well, kind of. So we're looking at meats, fish, veggies, fruit, nuts and seeds. No grains, legumes, dairy or processed foods. Paleo claims to mimic our ancestral nutrition, reducing inflammation and boosting vitality. So the pros: whole food emphasis, remove inflammatory seed oils, sugars and flour. Often leads to micronutrient and fibre improvement. And it will reduce processed food reliance. So let's look at the cons now. So you're going to be low carb by accident and it is not very good for athletes. Socially restrictive with no bread, no dairy or pasta. And miss out on calcium, fermented foods or legumes which are beneficial if they are tolerated. And also, going by the research, paleo isn't really what our ancestors ate. Research shows that humans ate grains, honey and tubers. So the hardline version of paleo is just another model reinterpretation. So the verdict: paleo is a great elimination template. A short-term strategy to get rid of junk food and reset food quality. But the rigid no grains, no dairy often backfires on the most active or sociable individuals. So, is it a diverse food source? It is more inclusive than keto, but still restricts grains and dairy. Macronutrient balance. Decent balance, though often too low in carbs for active people. Micronutrient balance. It is strong if it's whole food based, but it does lack calcium without dairy. Sustainability. It is moderately flexible and it is sustainable. Disease prevention. It does reduce inflammation markers, but as many others, it lacks long-term data. So body composition and energy. It's great for cutting processed foods, but it may require tweaking for performance goals. And lastly, one of the medical experts' favourites, the Mediterranean diet. The vegetables, olive oil, fish, legumes, nuts, some wine, red meat and low sugar. The heart-healthy poster child, backed by long-term trials. So what does the research say? Enstruct et al. In 2018, the Mediterranean diet reduced cardiovascular events by 30% over 5 years. Associated with lower all-cause mortality, better insulin sensitivity, and improved mood scores in elderly population. It does supports microbiome health via polyphenols and fermentable fibres. But it does have its limitations. Protein is too low for strength goals. Most Mediterranean plans emphasise lentils and fish. A 70 kilogram adult needs about 120 grams of protein per day, and that is to build muscle or maintain metabolism. Carb creep. Wine, bread, pasta and legumes can add up, especially without portion control. Cultural variation. Not all Mediterranean diets are created equally. Greek keto, for example, will look much different from French Mediterranean cuisine. So let's look at Mario, one of my clients. Mario loved Italian food, big family dinners, red wine and pasta every night. Instead of demonising his diet, we built around it. Mario had become overweight through a lifetime of drinking wine as part of his work days. Mario had become overweight and his days of drinking wine, taking his customers out for dinner, was starting to add up. So he added 15,000 steps per day. He added another 2 litres of water, a scoop of whey protein with his lunch and dinner, and he started going for post-meal walks. With these changes alone, he dropped 9 kilograms in 8 weeks. No tracking, no restrictions, just smart additions. With minimal changes that mostly focused around protein, the diet seemed to work well. So the verdict: the Mediterranean diet is widely respected and often promoted as one of the healthiest frameworks for general well-being and longevity. It emphasises whole foods, healthy fats, and a relaxed, enjoyable approach to eating. But while it is great for general population health, it is not a personalised solution. For those aiming to build muscle, change their body composition, or recover from intense training or stress, the standard Mediterranean diet, like many others, falls short, especially in terms of protein intake, meal structure, and goal-specific adaptation. It's a good foundation, but often needs strategic upgrades to fully support physique or performance goals. Is it a diverse food source? It is more inclusive than keto, but restricts grain and dairy. So is it a diverse food source? It's rich and inclusive. Veggies, fish, grains and legumes. Macronutrient balance. Naturally balanced, with moderate carbs and healthy fats and lean protein. Macronutrient balance. Excellent, abundant in antioxidants, fibre and healthy fats. Sustainability. Arguably the most sustainable diet worldwide. Disease prevention. Backed by strong data as presented by M.A.S.S in 2018 for heart and metabolic health. And body composition and energy. So as an ideal base, especially when protein intake is adjusted upwards. Now let's go deeper into the source of confusion. The experts shaping these diets and the online cults that form around them. Now let's look at the experts and the echo chamber. Now we get to the part that people don't want to talk about. It's easy to debate protein intake, insulin response, or food quality. But what really confuses the public and ruins health outcomes isn't the diets, it's often how they are delivered. Or more specifically, who delivers them. The experts. Some are well-meaning, some are brilliant, some are just marketers with a stethoscope. What really binds them all is this. None of them fully agree with their own fan base. The public brand says one thing. The private life, not surprisingly, is much more flexible. But online, nuance dies quickly. Algorithms reward certainty, not complexity. And the people that follow these experts turn suggestions into laws. Then those laws turn into mortality. Now I didn't just pull this opinion out of nowhere. I spent a lot of time inside dozens of diet groups all around the world. Facebook groups, subreddits, private forums, talking to real people. Observing how they think, how they treat each other, and how they talk about the food. And I have to say, I'm not shocked by much, but what I did find was pretty shocking. Most of these spaces were hostile, and not just passionate hostile. You'd see things like name-calling, mocking, or even bullying of anyone who questions the group's diet model. It was cult-like, and what stood out most is how often these communities referred to the experts, the ones these communities had built their beliefs around. As a nutritionist, I would often see these so-called teachings being quoted back to me. The thing is though, they just didn't seem accurate. The quotes were misused, and the science was misunderstood. Sometimes it was outright fantasy passed off as fact. 9 times out of 10 it was justified by, well, this is what the expert said. And that's when I started taking notes. I wrote down every name that I was told to look up, every guru who'd been quoted or misquoted, and every claim that fell off. And here's the thing, I had never heard of most of these people. And that's by no means a dig at the experts. My research is usually based on journals, clinical trials, and prediction and real-life client results, not TikTok reels or social media influencers. So I'd done something different. So I used 2 artificial intelligence tools, ChatGPT and Grok, to help me research these individuals. Why 2? Well, for me I think 2 because ChatGPT has a reputation for leaning to the left, while Grok often leans to the right. I wanted balance. I wasn't looking for bias confirmation. I was looking for a full spectrum picture, as I didn't know enough about these individuals to form an opinion myself. After completing that process, I visited each individual's websites if they had one, had a look at the books they published, watched some of their interviews, and checked their actual words from social media. And that's their own words, not just what the internet says about them. And the most eye-opening thing, most of them are far more moderate, more thoughtful, and more nuanced than their online followers make them out to be. Some of them have fascinating stories. Some of them are high performers in their own field. Some of them are genuinely educated and well researched. So this is by no means an attack. I'm not here to smear anyone, and many of these guys and ladies are quite charismatic, and I can fully understand why people would follow them. And one day I hope they continue their research and can get enough evidence to back their claims. But here is more of a focus on what the experts actually say and to show you what their followers say and see what the difference is. This distinction does matter. From what I have experienced and when I've done more of my own research looking at psychology, it's not the diet that's harming people, it's the misinterpretation that is often the cause. So what you're about to read next is AI-assisted, unfiltered, bias check breakdown of the most commonly referenced diet experts. What they teach, where the facts get stretched, and how it all spins out of control once it hits the internet. So let's dive into this echo chamber, one expert at a time. So carnivore experts, meat, muscle and marketing. So Sean Baker, orthopaedic surgeon, former athlete, in the face of carnivore. So public persona, plants are toxic, carbs are unnecessary, and Baker often uses strong, divisive language like a January 2024 post on X where he called veganism a cult of lies, sparking backlash, and of course, tons of clicks. Now, I have been known to tease vegans online myself, so I will remain silent on this one. So, controversies and contradictions. His medical licence was revoked in 2017, cited for incompetence in surgical procedures. It was reinstated in 2019, but the stain remains, and he leans into it. Baker frames himself as a warrior against the big pharma and the medical dogma. Well, they really did play it into his hands by doing this. A smart move, and these two big players have a lot to answer for globally. So, now this is moving away from the AI thing. Now I think in Sean Baker's actions here, this is probably one of the worst things. So the carnivore diet heavily dismisses any official guidance that is out there. The followers basically say that it's a slave diet, we are being poisoned by the government, big pharma, and the health industries want to make a lot of money from us. So by revoking his license is probably one of the best things he could have ever done to help him weaponize this against him. This plays into Sean's hands, and yeah, I have to say, well played Sean if you're going to lean into it. So blood work leaked in 2023. So the blood work showed low testosterone. It was borderline pre-diabetic glucose, and his response at the time, numbers don't matter if I feel good. Now, yes and no. So yeah, I agree with Sean. If he feels good, it's his life. He's personalised this diet to meet himself. However, one of the big things about the carnivore diet is it increases testosterone and all these kind of things. So yeah, but I mean, if he feels good, he feels good. So wine and fruit. Despite preaching zero carbs, he's admitted on podcasts and Instagram to enjoying bourbon, wine, and even the occasional orange. Community extremes, Meat.RX, his platform, has coaches who shun members for eating vegetables. Forums like Reddit or Carnivore have threads full of I cheated by eating a cucumber and such like. And you know, I think it would be interesting actually, if this stuff does interest you, to go and have a look, not at Sean Baker's forum specifically, but any of the carnivore groups. If you have a look on Facebook, for example, I found them to be some of the more extreme ones. Go and have a look and actually see. It's really interesting if you read through people's real life experience of it. There's a lot of athletes saying that it didn't really work for them and they revert back to carbs, and there's a lot of people that says they changed their life. The main thing that sticks out as me, because I have a lot of experience of dealing with people, is what was the start point? If the start point was absolutely terrible, most of them are, to be fair, they're very honest to say they were morbidly obese, pre-diabetic, and then they've took this big jump to change their life. So almost any diet probably that we've just mentioned above would have made them feel 100 times better. So I'm not saying the carnivore doesn't work for them, because in some of them they seem to say it really does. I'm just saying that sometimes I think it's more important to understand what their start point is, and that any positive change would have made a difference. So the reality here, Baker's body looks great, he's clearly strong, but his own behaviour, occasional wine, flexible eating, joking about coffee, suggests he doesn't follow the hardline message his followers says he promotes. Well, good for him, and certainly different from what the group say about him. Yeah. So I do think this is one reality from where I've looked, where Sean does actually seem to be, very different from what the group say about him. So next one here, Ken Berry, carnivore again. So he was the author of Lies My Doctor Told Me. He's a carnivore proponent, and he's a YouTuber with 70,000 plus subscribers. He definitely has a big reach when he speaks on YouTube. So public claims. Carnivore reverses diabetes in weeks. The proper human diet includes zero grains, legumes or sugar. And doctors don't know what they're talking about. So GERD claims mismatch. A 2024 A 2024 study showed worsening reflux in long-term carnivore patients. Berry insists carnivores or their diet cures GERD. Electrolyte sales. Berry sells $30 a bottle keto chow drops on his website. Reddit threads accuse him of monetizing fear, while his recipes still include table salt and normal hydration protocols. Berries and flexibility. In YouTube Question and Answers, he admits to eating berries, using condiments, and enjoying treats occasionally. So as you'll see, there are a bit of contradictions from the first few claims to the end there. So the reality, Berry's content is educational, but often exaggerated. The marketing sometimes doesn't match the science, and his community pushes more extremism than he does. So not surprising, and seems to be the case with most of these here. Now I did look 3 or 4 other carnivore experts, but I just captured the main ones because, to be honest with you, the same trends in all of the experts pretty much continued. So to make this shorter, I removed some of them. Vegan experts, ethics, elimination, and optics. So Dr. Neil Barnard, head of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, PCRM, author and plant-based pioneer. So his claims: veganism prevents cancer, diabetes, and heart disease. Dairy is toxic and addictive, and animals and animal products should be entirely removed from the food system. I don't know about that, Mr. Barnard. So red flags. Adventist influence. Many PCRM studies are funded by Seventh-day Adventists organisation, a religious group that promotes plant-based living for spiritual reasons, and critics say this biases outcomes. Overhyped cancer claims. Studies cited by Barnard show a correlation, not causation, between meat and cancer risks. His marketing doesn't always reflect the nuance. Spotted with dairy. At Veg News events in 2022 and 2023, attendees reported him enjoying dairy-based desserts. Now there's nothing wrong with that, except when your brand frames dairy as evil. However, good for him, as we all love dairy. Dismisses supplements publicly, recommends privately. On social media, PCRM promotes veganism as complete, but in his books, Barnard encourages vitamin B12, DHA, and iron supplementation. Barnard is passionate and polished, but his public stance often oversimplifies complex science. His own habits show he is not so black and white. Now, Dr. Michael McGregor, author of How Not to Die, and the creator of nutritionalfacts.org. Gregor is the research wizard of veganism. His YouTube videos are full of citations, graphs, and animations. So problems. Cherry-picking accusations. Gregor is known for citing studies that support his bias while ignoring counterpoints. For example, he repeatedly cites IGF-1 as proof meat causes cancer, even when human data is mixed. Non-profit questions. Nutritionfacts.org is funded by donations, which some critics say gives donors sway over messaging. Social contradictions. In question and answers, he's admitted to enjoying vegan processed foods, snacks, and even taking supplements. And that is despite promoting a whole food narrative. Fans go extremist. Instagram users, 1 million plus, often parrot meat kills, turning Gregor's carefully worded videos into black and white dogma. So the reality, Gregor knows veganism needs supplements. He says so. But many of his followers, especially in Reddit forums, take his curated videos as holy scripture, assuming perfection comes from plants alone. So fasting experts, window eating, wild claims. Dr. Jason Fung, author of the Obesity Code and the Cancer Code, co-founder of the fasting method, he claims fasting resets insulin, cures obesity, and helps fight cancer. 1 meal a day is safe and ideal for many. Extended fasting, 24 to 72 hours, can be done routinely. So his issues: cancer cure claims. While autophagy is real in animals, there's no clinical evidence fasting cures cancer. Yet some posts on his fasting method blog says like starve the cancer. High coaching costs. Fung's program costs $1,200 per year. Critics on Reddit are fasting says it's elitist and paywalled health. The reality is this is cheaper than what a 16-year-old PT will charge for 20 training sessions, so less than budget would be more accurate in terms of cost. Women's health risk. His protocols don't address that many women report amenorrhea, hair loss and mood issues from prolonged fasting. Hypocrisy in practice. In podcasts and private interviews, Fung admits he doesn't always fast himself and eats a normal schedule when travelling or socialising. So the reality. Fung has helped many people, but his fan base often treats fasting like a spiritual cleanse instead of a tool. Some even developed orthorexia-like behaviours. Dr. Walter Longo, biochemist and researcher behind the fasting mimicking diet, FMD, and Prolon. His claims, FMD can promote longevity and immune health. IGF-1 levels are critical markers of cancer risk. Eating less is better for health span. And the concerns. Prolon commercialization. His patented fasting kit costs $200 per cycle and are often promoted as essential, despite Longo himself eating a normal plant-based diet when not fasting. Mouse versus human data. Most of his claims come from rodent studies. Human trials are small and underpowered. Mixed IGF-1 data. While low IGF-1 may reduce cancer risk, it is also linked to muscle loss and cognitive decline in older adults. Cult-like following. Fans on Reddit and X believe Prolon reversing aging despite no long-term data. So the reality. Longo is a legit scientist, but the commercial arm of his work blurs the line between research and product marketing. Balanced and intuitive experts. Moderation or misdirection. Toby Amador, registered dietitian, Forbes contributor and cookbook author. His message, eat everything in moderation, follow my plate and avoid diet culture. So his concerns, brand partnership, works with food companies like Eggland's Best and Kind Bars. This raises questions about objectivity. Oversimplification, recommends portion control and moderation to audiences that often have no nutritional foundation to make those calls. Discrepancy in behaviour, shares high protein recipes and fitness routines privately while promoting flexible balance publicly. In the reality, Toby is likely a helpful guide for the average person, but our community lacks structure, and without coaching or tracking, most people overeat carbs and undereat protein. Now on to Christy Harrison, anti-diet author and intuitive eating advocate, host of the Food Psych podcast. Core belief, diets are oppressive. Weight does not determine health, and intuitive eating is only ethical approach. Controversies. Metabolic syndrome blind spot. Her content often ignores real consequences of obesity, insulin resistance, and nutrient deficiency. Freedom to binge. Followers interpret no food rules as eat whatever, whenever, even when it comes to harm, even when it causes harm. Privately tracks intake. In interviews, Christy admits to moderating her own eating, watching portion sizes, and being mindful, just not in a diety way. So the reality, the message of self-compassion is valuable. But for many who have never had structure or food education, intuitive eating can enable harmful habits, and it can worsen health markers. Wrapping up, experts bend, followers break. So here's the pattern. Experts bend their own rules. Followers turn those rules into identity. We blame diets, but the real issue is how they are used and who uses them. Experts say one thing in their books and something entirely different on podcasts. Fans ignore the nuance and scream absolutes on social media. They turn "this helped me" into "this is the only way to live." You are not broken, you are misled. You are sold certainty in a world of complexity. Now this isn't about who's right. This is about what is real. Your biology doesn't care about hashtags. It cares about energy, hormones, mood, and improvement, and movement. It cares about results. So after reviewing all the most popular diet experts, and I didn't include them all here, that was a deliberate choice. Why? As I said before, the patterns become so repetitive. All the data started to sound the same, but on repeat. And I didn't want this to become a hunt for flaws in people who mostly have good intentions. I used AI to give me balanced overviews. I cross-referenced their books. I looked at their websites. I looked at many of their interviews. I went to their social media pages. and I watched some of their videos. And you know, the one thing that I did find is most of these people are much more reasonable than their followers quoting them. If the experts actually visited some of the diet communities that treat their words like sacred law, carnivore, vegan, fasting, whatever it is, I believe genuinely most of them would be shocked. And I think they would probably disagree how their names are used. Their advice is being distorted. It has been stripped of nuance. And it is being weaponized against others who don't agree. Now, that's not the expert's fault. It's just what happens when complex humans are squeezed through the lens of identity, internet algorithms, and marketing. And if I'm being real with you, I have my own thoughts and my own feelings about these diets. I'm not perfect. I barbecue, I love cheesecake, and if there's apple custard and crumble, I definitely wouldn't say no. I'll be having it. I won't be skipping my kid's birthday cake. However, I have shared many of these things online, and you'll often see me making cakes with my son and eating many things which I would class as not particularly healthy. However, I do eat clean at least 90% of the time, maybe more. Mostly single ingredient whole foods. But I'm not about to tell you I live like a monk. I love a bacon roll and a cold day in Scotland. And it'll never stop me hitting my macros that week. Because I'm not trying to be perfect. I am living well. I am staying strong. And I do like to teach others how to do the same. And if you have seen me poke fun at certain diet groups online, it is not because of their food choices. It is because of their behaviour, their superiority, and their shaming. That blind tribalism that turns food into moral compasses. When I read what many of these experts actually say, I do see people that most can relate to. People who want to help. People who do eat imperfect meals. Who do adjust based on their lifestyle and their needs. People who do understand that real nutrition is personal. And that food should fuel your life and not control it. Now that's the takeaway here. We don't need another guru. We need context, we need flexibility, and we need to think for ourselves. Now let's move forward with that mindset. So coming up next, we're going to go global. What can you learn from the healthiest populations on Earth? Blue zones, Okinawa, urban chaos, and how geography beats macros every time. So what the world actually tells us. Longevity, culture, real life habits, and the economic truth behind food. So you've probably heard the claims. People in blue zones live forever. The Mediterranean diet is magic. Low meat equals long life. But let's slow down. If the perfect diet already existed, we would all be on it. We would not be dealing with record high obesity, burnout, diabetes, and mental health collapse. So what's really happening? This chapter zooms out. We're going global, looking at what people actually eat, how long they live, and what role real food plays. We'll separate the fairy tales from the facts. We'll compare cultures. We'll look at socio-economic, environmental, and physiological contexts behind every plate. Because no food strategy lives in a vacuum. What works in Costa Rica may not work in Coatbridge. What works in Okinawa might collapse in Manchester. And yet, we can still learn something. Let's begin with the most famous myth of all. The blue zones. So the blue zones, myth versus reality. So the concepts of blue zones was popularised by Dan Buettner, who identified 5 regions with unusually high life expectancy. So you have Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, Icaria in Greece, Nicoya in Costa Rica, Loma Linda in California, were the Seventh-day Adventists. They're often used to promote plant-based eating and calorie restriction as the secrets to longevity. But the data tells a more complicated story. Okinawa, Japan. So the claim here, sweet potatoes and plant-heavy meals explain why Okinawans live so long. The reality, Yamada et al. In 2022 showed Okinawa elders consumed regular pork and fish. Protein intake was 60 grams a day, which is below modern standards for muscle preservation. The real longevity foods weren't superfoods, but simple, unprocessed staples. So a 2020 audit found that over 230,000 elders were unaccounted for. Inflating age stats since 2000. Obesity and fast food have surged, and longevity is now declining. Sardinia. Long-living Sardinians eat plants, hike mountains, and drink red wine. The reality. Rossi et al. In 2023 observed daily cheese, eggs, and pork intake. They seen they were doing 10,000 plus steps per day, mostly from hilly shepherding work. Meals were found to be high in fat and protein, with homemade sourdough. So some key factors. Movement. These men and women work until their 80s. They don't snack, they don't binge, and they don't sit all day. Icaria, Greece. So the claim, plant-based Mediterranean meals extend life and fight dementia. The reality, Papadopoulos et al. In 2023, Icarian diet includes lamb, goat cheese, and red wine. Most Icarians eat seasonally, grow their own food, and have deep spiritual lives. Faith, community, and routine are important as the food. Nicoya, Costa Rica. The claim, corn, beans, and squash equals longevity. The reality, Gonzalez et al. In 2023 found that 80% eat chicken, pork, or fish weekly. Meals are cooked from scratch. Sodas and snacks are rare. They walk more, they eat together, and they live simply. So in Loma Linda, California, the claims Adventists live 7 to 10 years longer because of plant-based diets. The reality, Butner in 2021, many still eat eggs and fish. The real factors, no alcohol, no smoking, strong social network, regular fasting, and Sabbath rest. They also have meal prep culture. So the summary here, the Blue Zone blueprint. Across all 5, meat is eaten, just not overconsumed. Protein is modest, but neat movement is high. Processed food is rare, and family and community come first. It's not about magical food groups. It's about consistency, simplicity, and connection. So the global health snapshot. Let's zoom out of the longevity zones and look at health around the world. So Japan, still among the longest lifespans, but sarcopenia, muscle loss, is rising. Yamada et al. In 2023 found 10% increase in falls and fractures due to low protein intake in over 60s. Young people now eat more fast food and less fish than previous generations. United Kingdom, one of the highest ultra-processed food intakes in Europe. Office for National Statistics in 2023 found that 64% of calories in the average UK diet are from processed foods. Protein intake averages 60 grams per day, which is low for physically active adults. School lunches, often pizza, sandwiches, crisps and juice, heavy in refined carbs, low in fibre or protein. In the United States, CDC in 2023 found that over 60% of caloric intake in low-income areas is ultra-processed. Soda, frozen meals, sugar, seed oils are all cheap and accessible. Over 60% of adults are overweight and 40% are obese. So in France, meals take longer, portion sizes are smaller, and 20% of calories come from dairy, including butter and cheese. DuPont et al. In 2023 found that obesity was down 15% since 2010, not because of food quality, but how they eat. Social meals, less snacking, no eating in the car or at their desks. Socio-economic patterns. The poorer you are, the worse your diet tends to be. And not because of willpower, often because of education and access. Walker et al. In 2010 found that food desserts equaled more junk food intake. No kitchen, no time, no tools equaled no home cooking. Basically, you can't grill salmon if you don't have a cooker. You can't grill chickpeas if your gas bill is overdue. School lunches and work culture, UK versus US. Let's compare two major drivers of national eating habits, school and work. School meals in the UK. Pros, universally free meals in the early years. School nutrition standards exist on paper. However, kids still eat crisps, biscuits, sugary yogurts, and few schools enforce full sit-down eating. Protein is rarely prioritised. Water is often replaced by juice or flavoured milk. School meals in the US of A. Pros: they are subsidised programmes for low-income families. Some schools offer fruit and vegetables. However, pizza is considered a vegetable as per the USDA loophole. Chocolate milk is the norm, and ultra-processed meat pies, fries and cookies dominate the menus. So workplace food in the UK. Sandwich culture, white bread, crisps and Coca-Cola. Little time for lunch, and when they do, little time for lunch, calorie-laden coffees, drinks and skipped meals is the norm. So workplace food, US. Even worse, fast food runs, giant sodas, and lunch is a drive-through. Vending machines are pretty much Red Bull, and big culture for the work and lunch desks. So what this means, your environment shapes your food choices much more than your willpower. Your income, your schedule, your postcode, they all dictate your default diet. A family in a Puri in Glasgow, for example, on benefits, doesn't need eat more lentils. They need access, time, confidence, education and support. And that is what diets often ignore. Culture, class and diet. Let's break this down even more. In wealthier homes, more gym memberships, meal prep tools, access to organic, grass-fed and fancy supplements. Food is seen as optimization. In working class homes, they have less time. Food is fuel, comfort and stress relief. Food is fuel, comfort and stress relief. Cheap equals good. And food is seen as survival, not optimization. So coming up next, what actually predicts long life? It's not kale. Grip strength, VO2 max and sleep are the real pillars. Blood work, hormones and how your biology predicts success. While long-term change is always about behaviour and biology. And a reality check on government health policies and your favourite influencers. So the real predictors of a long life. Let's drop the diet hype just for a minute. Here's what actually predicts whether you live longer, feel better and stay sharp into old age. So number 1, grip strength. Yep, you heard that right. Pearson et al. In 2023, gerontology found that grip strength is a better predictor of all-cause mortality than BMI, blood pressure and cholesterol. Why? Because it represents muscle mass, neuromuscular efficiency, resilience during illness or injury, and in short, weak hands, weak body, poor recovery, higher risk of death. So number 2, VO2 max, and that's cardiovascular fitness. So the ability to walk uphill without stopping, climb stairs without wheezing, or play with your kids without collapsing. These are real world indicators that VO2 max predicts cardiovascular risk better than cholesterol panels. A study of Pearson in 2023, people in the top 25% of the VO2 max live 9 to 12 years longer on average. So number 3, sleep quality. Everyone talks about protein and macros, but few talk about 33% of your life that you are sleeping. So chronic poor sleep, it raises cortisol, ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, insulin resistance and inflammation. So the effects, even if your diet is clean, poor sleep causes fat gain, muscle loss, mood swings and sugar cravings. So 7 to 8 hours per night is the strongest non-food predictor of fat loss, performance and mental health. Number 4, stress and cortisol. Constant low-grade stress wrecks your blood sugar, sex hormones, motivation and food decisions. JACA in 2017 found that chronic stress drives overeating and under-recovery, more than willpower and more than diet choice. So number 5, connection and purpose. So number 1 thing Blue Zone elders have in common: purpose, family, social meals and spirituality. You can drink wine and eat sourdough every day, but if you're lonely, overworked and disconnected, no diet will fix that. So next up, let's look at blood testing, hormones, and the science of personalization. So do you want to know what diet actually works for you? Start with your biology. Blood work changes everything. Here's what we test for with our clients. Generally, we will go for a 44 panel blood test. But the main things we are looking at: free and total testosterone, THS, TSH, T3, T4, thyroid function, vitamin D3, inflammation markers, CRP, blood glucose and insulin, cortisol, estrogen, progesterone for women. Now that is just some of them. There's many other things that we would be wanting to look at, like organ health, diabetes, and multiple other things that will come up in your blood test. So we discussed this before. Client group, 5 men aged 33 to 60. The symptoms: fatigue, brain fog, no libido, and low motivation. All had little energy and all had excess belly fat. Now tests showed clinically low testosterone, elevated cortisol, and borderline thyroid issues. So what worked? High protein for most men on average was 200 grams a day plus. Moderate fat, around 80 grams, including fish, yolks, nuts, and olive oil. Timed carbs throughout the day, but more so around workouts, and more focus on fibre. Bearing in mind that half of these guys didn't go to the gym. However, some of them have now that they have fixed their testosterone, they've lost a lot of weight, and their diet has improved. They have more energy, so they actually want to go for themselves, not because it's in their plan. They reduce caffeine and late night screen time. Part of the snacking that they were doing at night was around screen time. And also the snacking was generally high processed carbohydrates or refined sugars. They all changed to 10 to 15,000 steps per day. Some of them more, none of them less. So the results: they normalized testosterone, fat loss was pretty substantial, strength gains for the ones who trained, clearer skin, better sleep, and increased libido. As I did say before, no medication was needed, although some did choose to further explore TRT with even better results than nutritional enhancements alone. DNA testing and the future of diets. So DNA isn't your enemy, but it can give you some powerful clues. It can tell you if you can tolerate lactose, if you're sensitive to gluten, how well you digest carbs, based on your AMY1 gene, whether you process caffeine quickly or it spikes your anxiety, and how your body handles nutrients folate, especially if you carry the MTHFR gene. Some clients thrive on carbs, others they crash. Some need folate. Some can't absorb B12 unless it is in methylated form. That's why personalised is power. You won't find this in a magazine. You only discover it through personalised data. So the business of dieting, let's follow the money. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. Why do so many people push extreme diets? Because they are profitable. Let's start with sponsored science. Many studies that are cited by influencers are funded by food companies, supplement brands, and advocacy groups. An example: plant-based lobbying groups funding anti-meat studies. Meat industry funding research. Sugar industry historically buried links to heart disease. So the results: cherry-picked data, exaggerated claims, and sensational headlines. So next up, social media influencers. Let's not pretend otherwise. Carnivore doctors sell meat-based supplements. Vegan influencers sell recipe books. Fasting gurus sell coaching plans. Balanced eaters get brand deals from food companies. Now that's just a generalization, but you know what I mean. It's not inherently wrong, but you do need to understand what is being sold. Maybe next time, ask, why are they trying to tell me this? What are they trying to sell me? So next up, the extreme sells. Nobody goes viral saying, eat more eggs and walk more. But meat cures anxiety. Plants are poison. Fasting prevents cancer. That gets clicks. Clicks build platforms. Platforms sell products. Which brings us to what social media gets wrong. Let's end with some truth bombs. Number one, you only see success stories. Lee in 2024 over 70% of social media posts about diets admit failure, side effects or reversals. Nobody posts, I lost muscle on OMAD, I quit carnivore due to constipation, and vegan made me tired. Number 2, the loudest voices aren't scientists. They're survivors of illness, former addicts, and passionate believers. So they found a method that worked for them, and now they preach it like it's gospel. So number 3, extremes feel safer than responsibility. Tell me what to eat is easier than let me learn what my body needs. Most people want rules, not results. Tribes, not testing. Certainty, not science. But the truth is, longevity and vitality don't come from kale, steak, or macros. They come from structure, simplicity, strength, sleep, support, and sustainable routines. Every long-lived culture eats mostly real food, moves daily, sleeps 7 to 8 hours, has a strong social fabric, and finds purpose and rhythm. So this part wasn't about food groups. This was about context. What people eat only matters when you understand where they live, how they live, who they eat with, and what they believe. Diets fail when you ignore these realities. So next time someone says, this diet changed my life, you can say, great, I'm going to build one that changes mine. So next up, the real reasons diets fail, and it's not your fault. So here's the honest truth. If you're struggling to eat better, to get in shape, to feel in control of your body, it is not because you're lazy. It's not because you lack willpower, and it's definitely not because you don't care enough. What we're really dealing with here is failure of education in a system built to benefit from your confusion and failure. We were never taught this. Think back to school. Did anyone ever teach you how to structure your meals for energy and performance? How protein affects your metabolism? How to understand your hormones? And how food and sleep impact your mood? Of course not. Instead, we learned algebra formulas we will never use, history from a biased lens, and health education that told us to eat cereal and drink orange juice. That's not an accident. Health is big business. Unhealthy people are profitable. They spend more on medications, appointments, surgeries, diet products, quick fix programs, energy drinks, takeaways, and therapies to fix the damage later. Why would the system teach you to be strong, independent, and metabolically healthy when it makes more money if you are not? The pharmaceutical industry doesn't want you empowered. Most of what passes for healthcare today is actually disease management. And as we've seen in earlier chapters, many doctors and dietitians, they do not follow their own advice. Not because they're bad people. Not because the system they work within isn't built for prevention. It's built for volume, not outcome. You get 10 minutes, you get prescription, you get referred, and you get blame when it doesn't work. But they never mention your testosterone levels. They never ask about your sleep. They never test your micronutrients. And they never teach you how to cook a real meal. And it's just the exact same story with financial freedom. It's not just food. They don't teach you when it comes to money when you were at school or finances. They don't teach you how to build a business. They don't teach you how to legally minimize tax. They don't teach you how to generate income online. And they definitely don't teach you how you can use your passport for more freedom. Because all the systems work when you stay in your lane, you work hard, you stay tired, and you pay into it for as long as possible. It's not a conspiracy, it's just incentives. And education, unfortunately, isn't based on what would empower you, it is based on what keeps you manageable. And that's why I don't blame you. This documentary, it's not here to make you feel guilty. It's here to help you feel aware. Because once you see the system, you stop blaming yourself. You stop falling for every new trend. You stop believing you're broken. And you start building your own strategy based on truth, not trends. Now that is the real path forward. Let's stop pretending the answers lie in a label. Vegan, carnivore, fasting, or balanced. They don't. The answer lies in how your body responds, what your environment supports, what your data tells you, and how you choose to show up one decision at a time. We've spent this chapter looking at the world. Now it's time to look inward. Let's take everything you've learned and build a system around you. In this next part, we will bring it all together. Let's think about custom plans, client outcomes, protein benchmarks, fat-carb adjustments, habit layering, and how to stop being a follower and start being a builder. So your diet, your biology, your rules. Personalized nutrition, long-term strategy, and why it all comes back to you. We've torn down the walls. We've seen what works in labs, in tribes, on Instagram, and in real life. We've seen the carnivore elite bending the rules. The fasting gurus eating outside their windows. The vegan doctors eating dairy desserts. And the balanced diet promoters secretly tracking every macro. So now the question comes to you. What's your strategy? Because here's the truth. No meal plan, no macro split, or 30-day challenge can ever replace a real strategy built around your own biology, lifestyle, and mindset. It's time to stop following and let's start building. This chapter isn't about giving you a new food religion. It's about handing you the blueprint to design your own approach, using science, feedback, and your own real-world results. Well, let's have a look. Why personalization beats perfection. You've seen it by now. Every diet can work, and every diet can fail. So what separates those who thrive from those who crash? The key to everything, personalization. It's not about what worked for the tribe in Greece. It's about what works for you, in your body, with your schedule, the three forces of personalized nutrition. Number 1, biological input. Age, hormones, sex, genetics, and activity level. An example, a 45-year-old shift worker needs a different strategy than a 21-year-old rugby player. Number 2, environmental constraints. Budget, kitchen access, work schedule, and food availability. An example here, Mario couldn't overhaul everything, but walking more and eating more protein helped him drop 9 kilograms. Number 3, psychological compatibility. So preference, belief, mental health, and family traditions. Example here, Joseph, she loved fasting. It gave structure, even when science said it wasn't optimal. And she adapted. So if your nutrition strategy doesn't address all three of these, it's already leaking energy, consistency, or progress. So how do you think like a coach? You don't need a certification, but you do need to stop thinking like a follower. Instead of thinking, what should I eat? Start asking, how is this working for me? Great coaches ask these 5 key questions. What is the client's biggest complaint? Energy, mood, weight, or digestion? Number 2, what is their real intake of protein, fats, carbs, and fiber? Number 3, what is their sleep, stress, movement, and recovery like? Number 4, what is already working, what isn't, and what is their previous diet history? And number 5, what's the next simplest, most meaningful step that will give them the biggest changes? And we can apply this to you right now. Have a go and answer all of them questions by yourself. The answers might help you get a step in the right direction. The 6 pillars of strategic nutrition. No matter your age, background, or goal, every successful long-term plan balances these 6 factors. And thankfully, these 6 is what almost all the experts actually agree on. So number 1, protein first. Not because it's trendy, because your muscles, hormones, enzymes, and satiety depend on it. So as a general guide, 1.6 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. And this will differ depending on your goals. This could increase by 50% to optimize muscle retention or muscle growth, especially if you're going to be in a calorie deficit. If you prefer pounds, this equates to 0.7 to 1 gram per pound of body weight, or optimally up to 1.25, in some cases 1.5 grams may be better. Number 2, carb timing matters. Carbs aren't bad, but when and how you eat them affects energy, cravings, fat storage, and your performance. Around training time, before, during, and after, carbs seem to work better. Late night sugar bombs tend to disrupt sleep and fat burning. Number 3, fats equal hormones. Dietary fats influence testosterone, estrogen, brain function, and vitamin absorption. So don't fear fat. Just focus on quality sources like olive oil, eggs, avocado, nuts, and fish. Number 4, fiber and micronutrients. Fiber feeds your microbiome. Micronutrients regulate everything from your thyroid to your mood. But you don't need a kale addiction. Start with veg and protein at lunch and dinner. Some berries or nuts. Water instead of juice. Number 5, sleep and stress aren't optional. A proper diet can't outperform broken sleep, chronic stress, and negative self-talk. You need to view sleep as your overall part of your plan, because without it, long term, many things will be impacted. Number 6, adjust every 7 to 14 days. The goal isn't about perfection, it's about being responsive and flexible. See yourself as a real-time experiment. Every week ask yourself, how is my energy? How is my digestion? How is my strength and recovery? Am I sleeping well? How are my cravings and my mood? And adjust based on these answers, not what somebody else is doing or trends. So as I said at the start, your diet, your biology, your rules. Real world adaptations, biology, biological challenges, and lasting change. Because life is messy. Your strategy must be too. Let's be honest, now you're probably sick of me saying that. Most diets work well when you're single, you have no stress, you sleep 8 hours, you train 5 times a week, and your fridge is full of prepped meals. But in reality, how often does life actually look like that? Exactly. This part of the chapter is about real world success. Because for strategy to stick, it must survive menopause, broken sleep, injuries, new jobs, parenthood, grief, and chaos. Now let's look at some clients who didn't have the perfect setup, but built something powerful anyway. So Ala, postmenopausal metabolic reset. Her background, mid-50s, postmenopause, insulin resistant, gaining weight despite eating healthy. Symptoms, hot flashes, low energy, mood swings, sleep issues, constant hunger, and uncontrolled weight gain. So the strategy, raised her protein to 150 grams per day, reduced processed carbs, loosely tracked, and also added more fiber. Added nuts, fish, avocado, olive oil to support hormones. She walked 20 minutes daily after dinner, and she focused on improved sleep routine. She also drank far too much coffee, so what we'd done is we changed the timing of the coffee. So rather than having a coffee as soon as she got out of bed, instead she would focus on being hydrated. She would have her breakfast, and then once she's finished, she would have her coffee. Throughout the day, rather than reaching for coffee all the time, she would have water. Ala did love coffee, so we did keep in as many as we could. We just tried to minimize it. So the results, 4 kilogram fat loss in 4 weeks, and massively reduced her waist. Reduced menopause symptoms, better sleep, and clearer thinking. So some takeaways. Hormones change the rules. However, we can only work with what we've got. And with more focus on the things we discussed, you really can rewrite the rules. So let's look at John, former Marine who had fasting fatigue. Background, so athletic past, shifted to OMAD due to time pressure, and he lost muscle very fast. As he was really focused on the scale going down, and was an athlete who was also a semi-pro footballer in the past, one of his biggest focuses throughout his life, and probably because of his generation and what they focused on at the time, was the scale going down. So his measurement of success and why he stuck to OMAD for so long is because the scale was consistently coming down. The problem is it was muscle that was being lost. It wasn't until he seen loose skin, no muscle mass, and seemed like a skinny older man, he looked in the mirror and realised This is exactly the person I told myself I would never become. So the symptoms. He had weakness, brain fog, muscle wasting, loose skin. His weight gain was starting to go around the midsection. Initially this wasn't so noticeable because he was seeing everywhere else getting smaller. It wasn't until things started to get small he realised how much of that was stored around his stomach. So strategy. Initial strategy, similar to Allah. So he increased his meals, building them back up slowly, and a big focus on ensuring he was getting enough protein. Once he got back to eating properly, he was eating healthier carbs and he was eating a lot more protein. He could feel his energy coming back, he was sleeping better, and he started going to the gym 3 times a week, and within 2 months he was back to looking like an athlete. We had an interesting discussion about this. So one of the things he did feel a little bit guilty of is because he was seeing the scale going down so much, he'd convinced a few others that they should do the same. Interestingly, one of the reasons why he stopped is he was looking at the people he had encouraged and realised, because it's always easier sometimes to notice in somebody else, how their bodies were changing in a negative way. They were becoming fatter, softer, and they looked like they were wasting away. So the results from this: gained visible muscle, skin tight again, lost 3 inches from the waist, and went from 16 stone down to 14, and then started gaining again when the muscle come back on. The biggest thing was he was able to look in the mirror and not feel like a shriveled old man. So fasting isn't wrong, but misapplied fasting with no protein or resistance training is a recipe for disaster. So let's look at Danielle. Sleep, pain and medication. She had chronic back pain after 2 back surgeries. She was on 3 different medications. 2 of them were affecting her appetite. So symptoms: fat gain, cravings, sore stomachs, mood swings and poor digestion. So the strategy. We started focusing on anti-inflammatory meals, which were high in omega-3. Salmon, berries, olive oil and oats. She had 1 daily shake because while she was still on one of the 3 medications, she was still having issues eating high amounts of protein. She used to skip breakfast and her first meal was at lunchtime. And then she started focusing on protein at breakfast, which was her first meal used to be at lunchtime. Now she was eating breakfast, which was a good macro balanced meal. Obviously, as we discussed before, with a high focus on protein. For the first few months she didn't use the gym, but she did focus heavily on walking, and now she's starting to do mobility work in kettlebells. So the results: reduced 2 of her medications, so she's now only taking 1. She took them for 8 years and believed that she was only ever going to get worse. Much better sleep. She was sleeping sometimes 3 times a night because of her medication and her sore back. Now, some nights she's sleeping up to 10 hours. Improved mood and digestion. A lot of that down to the healthier diet, but also minimising medication. So 30 pounds lost, and most of that was without stepping foot in a gym. So key takeaways: chronic conditions aren't fixed with restriction. They're managed through stability, simplicity and healing focused foods. So quite often we have focused on weight loss. So let's look at Tobias, bodybuilder, and how he used the milk strategy. So his background: he is one of my clients. He is a Swedish bodybuilder and he is currently preparing for the National Bodybuilding Championships. He was eating around 4,000 to 5,000 calories a day, and he had really plateaued, really struggling to put on size, and he come to me looking for support. So symptoms: he was feeling flat, he had low appetite and struggled to go beyond his calories, and he started to have a slow recovery as he felt like he was force feeding himself all the time and just didn't feel great all around. He was also training 6 times a day, which was really starting to catch up with him. So what did we do? Well, as he was at the stage where he believed that he couldn't eat anymore, he didn't believe that his plateau was because of overtraining and undereating. So as an experiment, just to show the easiest thing I could think, Tobias is a mechanical engineer, but he's also a dairy farmer. So I asked him, do you like milk? He's like, yeah, I love milk. I says, okay, I want you to try something just to prove to you, so we can get rid of that belief that you're eating too much. I asked him to eat 1 gallon of milk, yep, just under 5 litres of milk, every day for a week. And now that is on top of his diet. The reason I asked for milk, it's already a whole meal, which will give you protein, carbohydrates and fats. And with it being liquid, it is so easy to consume at the end of each meal. So basically he was just having a glass of milk at the end of each meal. Simple. Actually quite refreshing and feels good. I also asked him if he could reduce his training from 6 times a week to 3 times, keeping the training intensity, but as we'd switch to full body workouts, we would be getting a little bit more volume and frequency just with more rest days. So the result from that, within the first week, Tobias had gained 4 kilograms. Now, he hadn't gained that in the last year. We only done that for a week, and that was just to let him see that we can make changes with more rest and higher calories. So once we removed that limiting belief, we then switched to protein intake, where a lot of his protein intake was coming from dairy and various things because it was easier to eat. We started focusing more on lean meats and fish, which he also loved. But when he was at a time when he was struggling to eat and he had that belief that he was stuffed all the time, he was really struggling with certain foods. So within 3 months, he had gained a lot of muscle. I think once we stopped overtraining, he got the rest he needed and the adequate nutrition, he gained size very quickly. So up till now, he's gained 30 pounds of lean muscle and he's still going. He is preparing for his competition in September and I'll be sharing how he looks nearer that time. He's broke multiple strength plateaus. He's recovering faster and enjoying the extra 2 days off a week that he's getting, 3 actually. And he looks much bigger, much fuller, and you can really start to see a lot of muscle density. So key takeaways. Even elite lifters benefit from simple, strategic tweaks. Sometimes it's not about more, but about being smarter. So your plan should be continuing to evolve. You don't always need the same strategy. What worked for you in your 20s might break you in your 40s. As a single entrepreneur, may collapse when you start raising 2 kids. During fat loss might not work for muscle gain. And that is the power of personalization. Your plan adapts and grows with you. So 3 adaptive strategy questions. Ask these every month. What's the most consistent thing I am doing well right now? When you find the answer, double down on it. It's one of the easiest things that you can do personally. Number 2. What is the most frustrating or inconsistent habit? Once you know the answer, simplify it. Number 3. What is my body telling me lately? Energy, sleep, digestion, and libido. Listen to what your body's telling you. Think about it and adjust. Well, let's look at layering habits versus sticking to rules. Don't try build Rome in a day. Build it like Lego. So layer 1, hit your protein goal. Layer 2, improve your sleep window. Layer 3, improve your knee. Aim for 10 to 15,000, dependent on your goals. Again, it's just an example. Layer 4, try adding 20 grams of fiber. If you're a male or a female, the recommendation for a male should be 35 grams and a female around 30 grams. Again, if they don't work well for you, adjust it. Layer 5, instead of thinking I need to go to the gym every day, how about just trying 3 times a week? And level 6, think about carb timing. So they are simple things, but if you fail one, you don't collapse the plan. You go back to that layer, rebuild it, simplify it, and try again. Now let's look at why you don't always need a meal plan. Now here's the trap that many fall into. Just give me a plan to follow. Unfortunately, plans fail when life changes. Systems succeed when life changes. So instead of eat this at 7 a.m, try, I'm going to make sure I have a high protein breakfast and I'm going to add a banana if I'm training that day. Just an example, but again, you would adjust it to your needs. So instead of saying meal 3 is going to be chicken, broccoli and rice, I want you to try, I'm going to aim for 40 grams of protein, 10 grams of fat and 30 grams of carbs. Choose the foods that fit your day. Freedom inside structure is what creates consistency. So design your system with this mindset in 5 easy steps. Know your protein target. Work out your protein based on your body weight and adjust it based on your goals. Now, split that into how many meals you have per day. And now you have that. This is how much protein I want. For me, personally, I aim for 50 grams of protein, at least 7, sometimes 8 times per day. I constantly want to build size and strength, so yes, to many that might seem extreme. Number 2, set a minimum fibre and water target. So an easy thing for water, you want to aim for something between 2 to 3 litres a day, and you want to adjust based on the colour of your urine. Easy way for water, get a 2.5 litre bottle of water, fill it up in the morning and make sure it's finished by the end of the day. You will also probably eat teas or coffee on top of that. Some healthy teas do contribute towards hydration. Coffee, I wouldn't count. Fibre, just going by what the recommendations are, try and aim for 30-35 grams of fibre per day. Time carbs. Number 3, an easy way to look at this. Okay, so the more active you're going to be, the more carbs you're going to eat. If you're training, around training, post-training especially, you're probably going to have some high glycemic or refined sugar carbohydrates. On the not so active days, reduce your carbs. If you feel you're gaining weight because of this, reduce again. Just all is about adjusting. So number 4, sleep and stress audit weekly. If you track your mood, if you track your hours, quality, mood, cravings and digestion. Again, if it's not working, change again. Ideally for sleep, you want to go to bed at night time and you want to wake up before your alarm. If you have to use your alarm to wake up every day, you probably need to look at things like going to your bed earlier. Look at things that will improve your quality of sleep so you don't need so long. Or listen to your body. If you're waking up dehydrated or if you need to pee all night, something needs to be adjusted. Very simple things. If something or someone is stressing you out, address it. If they need to be removed from your life, that's their fault. Don't feel guilty for it. If they're a negative person who's bringing you down all the time and you can't fix it, sometimes they need to go. Number 5, adjust, adjust, adjust. If you look at as a minimum, adjusting every 14 days, use results, not emotion, and take action. So the power of coaching. Here's the truth. Everyone can do this alone, but most don't. Not because they're weak, probably because they second guess themselves. They lack structure. They don't have a sounding board. They feel isolated. They waste energy jumping between systems. They lack nutritional knowledge or how to apply it, and they are not accountable to anyone. So, even elite athletes have coaches, because coaching accelerates results and removes decision fatigue. So the final word, be a builder, not a follower. So you've made it this far. You've seen the research. You've seen the stories, the flaws in the systems, the myths and the truth. Now it's time to stop searching and start constructing. This is your biology, your timeline, your rules. You don't need a new diet. You need a system that is built for your life today and ready to evolve for tomorrow. And guess what? That system is waiting in your next decision, not someone else's pain. So forget the labels, forget the dogma, forget the rules and the noise. Across every diet we've examined, there are 6 things that every serious expert agrees on. They're simple, they're proven, and they speak for everyone, regardless of what diet you follow. So here's your call to action. Implement these 6 universal habits for 14 days. Hit your protein targets daily. Get 7 to 8 hours quality sleep. Walk at least 10,000 steps a day. Cut out ultra-processed foods. Manage your stress, even if it's just a little bit. And track what you're eating just for 1 week. Not forever, just 7 days. No judgment, just awareness. This will allow you to see where your protein, fibre, and your processed food intake really is. You'll probably be surprised as well by your hydration. Do this for 14 days, and I promise you'll feel better, you'll think clearer, and you'll be in full control of your body again. And this is not a diet. Forget about diets. It is the foundation behind every successful nutritional strategy. Every expert agrees. Every result you ever wanted starts here. You don't need a revolution. You need a system that respects your biology and your reality. Start here. You've got this. You made it. Not through another diet trend, not through a 30-day challenge, but through the truth. The science, the psychology, the real lives changed not by dogma, but by direction. And now you know, you were never broken. You were just underinformed, undersupported, and overexposed to noise. The system profits from your confusion, but your body, it responds to clarity. So as you will see now, it was never about finding the best diet. Not once in this entire documentary did we say, this is the best way for everyone. Because we do not believe in universal diets. We believe in universal principles and personal systems. Now you've seen now that experts bend their own rules. Success stories leave out the mess and the realities. And most of what you've been taught at school, designed to keep you dependent and controllable, not free. But now you know better. You are a builder. You are someone who is in control of your own body. You're not here to memorize meal plans. You are here to build your blueprint, one that fits your biology, your family, your goals, your daily schedule, your values, and your next chapter in life. And your next chapter in your life. And when life changes, just remember, you continue to change with it. You'll evolve, because now you should understand how things work, and that changes everything. So you're no longer a follower. You're no longer looking for the next diet headline, the next reel, the next guru. You are now the authority on your body. Let this be the last diet documentary you ever watch. Let this be the start of the system that works for you forever. Simple, strong, and sustainable, built around you and not rules. So go, apply these 6 rules. Reflect, adapt, and build. Not for Instagram, not for approval, but for the one person who has to live in this body for the rest of their life. You. So now we've reached the end of this documentary. We're going to look at a couple of bonus chapters. So just to finish off, dieting is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Let's be crystal clear. The diet industry is not built to get you healthy. It is built to keep you coming back. In 2024, the global weight loss and diet control market was worth over $320 billion. That includes meal plans, fat burners, app subscriptions, fad programs, protein shakes, cleanses, gut resets, fitness influencers selling PDFs. If diets actually solved the problem, long term, this industry would collapse. But they don't want that. They want repeat customers. Confusion equals control. The more confused you are, the more desperate you become. The more reliant you will be on others telling you what to eat. The more likely you are to buy the next solution. And this isn't just about companies. It is about an entire ecosystem designed to keep you overwhelmed. Health magazines with conflicting cover stories. Influencers sponsored by supplement companies. Fitness coaches who are afraid to say, it depends on you. And pharma reps nudging clinicians to treat symptoms, not root causes. Government food guidelines shaped by industry interests. And behind the curtain of sponsored research, let's talk about the studies. A 2022 meta-analysis by Marion et al. Found that 37% of all nutritional studies had direct or indirect funding from food or pharmaceutical companies. That includes studies showing no harm from sugar. Research comparing artificial sweeteners to water, milk and grain lobbying in school nutrition policies, and even major claims about plant-based or keto diets. The result? Science starts with hypothesis, but funded science starts with the desired outcome. So let's think about it. Who writes the guidelines? In both the UK and the US, the government dietary guidelines still push low-fat eating, high-carb consumption, minimal discussion of protein timing, or individual variation. And why is that? Because large-scale food contracts with schools, prisons, hospitals, and military operations are built on grain, dairy, and soy subsidies, the cheapest calories to mass produce. A 2023 report from The Lancet exposed how many policy advisors on UK and US food panels have direct ties to industry funders, including the British Soft Drinks Association, the Dairy Council, global cereal manufacturers, and ultra-processed food conglomerates. So clean eating is just as marketable. Let's not pretend it's just big brands causing problems. Even the natural health world has become commodified. Clean eating, sugar detoxes, 7-day juice resets, organic only pyramids. They sell you morality disguised as nutrition. Pure versus dirty, clean versus toxic. But the reality, a $6 smoothie bowl made with fruit and coconut, sugar spikes your blood glucose just like a chocolate bar. In some cases, maybe worse. An organic cereal with agave still tanks your energy after an hour. The problem isn't that health is profitable. The problem is that confusion sells better than the truth. And the influencers aren't helping mostly. You've probably seen it. One influencer says, fasting changed my life. Don't eat before 2 p.m. The next one, skipping breakfast kills metabolism. One shouts, meat is toxic. Another claims plants are poisonous. The louder the opinion, the bigger the reach. And behind the scenes, affiliate codes, brand partnerships, commission supplements, and sponsor studies. Even experts aren't immune. Remember, Sean Baker drinks wine. Neil Bernard eats dairy desserts. Jason Fung said fasting should be flexible. But the online versions of their advice are reduced to slogans and sound bites because complexity doesn't go viral. And just a reminder, quite often, it is not them who has said it. So what you're up against, this is what you're really fighting when you try to eat better. Billion-dollar companies shaping public policy. Health professionals working inside broken systems. Social media algorithms that reward extremes. A culture that moralizes food but ignores physiology. And an education system that will never teach you the basics. You're not weak, but you are up against the system. You're up against the machine. So one thing you can do to really take back control. Education and empowerment. Here's how you win. Learn the biological truths, just like you've done by watching this documentary. Apply the 6 principles that most experts agree on. Protein, sleep, activity, fibre, and awareness. Refuse to outsource your self-awareness. Don't let algorithms dictate what your body needs. Build, don't borrow. You are your best experiment. Once you understand this, no influencer, trend, or food label can manipulate you again. Because you're not buying diets, you're building a system. We're not here to demonize companies. We're not here to shame health professionals. But we are here to say this. The system wasn't built to empower you. So it's now your job to empower yourself. You've seen the science, you've met real-life clients, and you've learned the truths. And most importantly, you now understand what the industry doesn't want you to know. The freedom starts with your education, not rules, and your health is too important for you to outsource. So just to finish up here, the misinformation machine. It's not just influencers who are pushing nonsense. It's also the way the algorithms are designed. So in a 2023 study by Nature Digital Medicine, it found that 73% of top-forming TikTok nutrition content had significant misinformation. Over 40% promoted restrictive or disordered eating patterns, and less than 10% were posted by qualified professionals. And even when professionals post, their balanced, realistic advice is buried under shirtless guys pointing at text boxes, trending audio clips, and extreme claims without citations. Wellness is not a performance. Let's be real. Wellness online is no longer about health. It's about optics, clean aesthetics, perfect meal prep shots, coconut bowls, gym selfies, cold plunges, and high-ticket programs. Even vulnerability is curated. I was binge eating until I found this one trick. In reality, many of these people don't sleep, are on PEDs, battle secret sleep, often have eating disorders, constantly compare themselves to others, and privately they are questioning what they are doing. But you don't see that, because in the attention economy, the performance of health beats the pursuit of it. And that is where you get the echo chamber effect. One of the most damaging things about social media is when echo chambers form. A carnivore follower posts steak gains. Their community hypes them up. Anyone who questions it gets bullied, blocked, mocked, or dismissed. A vegan influencer shares plant power. Their community reposts, praises, and validates. Anyone who asks about B12 or protein is labelled anti-vegan. The result, you don't just follow a diet, you inherit a belief system. And anything that challenges that belief, it feels like a personal attack. As we said before, it's not science, it is tribalism. And then you have the guilt and shame feedback loop. You see a coach or influencer post their shredded physique with the caption, "No excuses, you just don't want it bad enough." And something inside you sinks, because deep down you are juggling a job, kids and finances, dealing with real health issues, recovering from years of bad advice, and just trying to make better choices. But now you feel like a failure again. This is why so many people give up. Not because they're weak, but because the negative impacts of the online fitness world made them feel unworthy. So real clients, real problems, real results. The clients that you have heard of in this video, the clients you've heard of in this documentary, rarely did they ever post their meals, track every bite on an app, and talk about toxins or miracles. What they did do, they focused on the things that would make a difference to them and make them a better person. They were too busy improving themselves, being flexible, adapting, and rebuilding trust in their body. They didn't get better by performing on social media. They got better by building something that fits their life. So here's how it stays sane in a world of extreme content. Number 1, mute anyone who makes you feel inferior, even if they're technically right. Their delivery often matters. Number 2, look for people who show their humanity. Coaches who are realistic. Coaches who admit their off-plan meals, bad days, and real life issues. Number 3, prioritize those who explain why and not just what. If they're not teaching you how it works, they're probably not helping you grow. Number 4, beware of binary thinking. All carbs are bad. Meat causes cancer. Fasting is magic. These should be red flags, not wisdom. Number 5, audit your feed. Ask yourself, is this helping me improve my relationship with food, or is it damaging it? You could probably look at that much deeper in all aspects of life. Are these people bringing anything positive to my life, or do they just bring me down? Simple solution, if they do make you feel bad, they can easily be removed. Social media, it isn't evil, but it isn't neutral either. It is designed towards controversy, speed and shock, not truth, progress or reflection. You know the difference between the performance of wellness and the real work of building health. I hope you have better insights, why trends go viral, why simple advice gets buried, and why most influencers are following a script, not science. The next time someone tells you, this is the only way, you'll know better and you'll build better. And you'll be glad to know that we have finally reached the end. I know it's been a very long watch, and some of the things might feel like they've been repeated slightly, but I wanted to make sure we covered most things to help you be the best version of yourself. Now thanks for watching, and I wish you every success with your nutritional enhancements. And now I'm going to bed.